a gardening note. I'm just trying to test out whether or not DLive is working as well, because I want to try to use that. Although I feel a little weird about it, because I guess they are banning people. But the guy that got recently banned was really pushing his luck, so I'm not too surprised. Because it's going to be interesting to figure out whether or not I can monitor these chats.
I wonder if anybody will ever get the full deal on what happened or what's going to happen to Stream Me.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard anything else about that. Hey guys, how's it going? I see you there. Alright. I wish I could... I have 2 monitors set up and this still isn't helping me.
Oh, look at you with your white privilege and your 2 monitors.
Well, to be fair, only one of them is mine. I kind of acquired the other one. I took it from my sister. She wasn't using it. The other one it's just some crappy little Acer that I bought when my good monitor died. So it's not quite the best, but it works. All right. Anyway, let's get started. Pick up where I left off in the underworld. About to go into the Tower of Babel, but I have no idea how different it's going to be because the road here was completely different. So we might actually be at the point where there's some more interesting stuff. For example, upon walking in, there's a strange, fiery-looking man at the entrance.
I don't think I have to read anything into that one.
Intruder. Must destroy. Boss fight. Yep, magma giant. This looks fun. Oh, wow, okay.
If he's a giant, then that means he can qualify for all those girls on Tinder, since you have to be 6 feet or taller.
That is true. This guy's more like, I don't know, 16 feet tall or something.
That's such an arbitrary metric, but what isn't when it comes to dating these days? It's like everything is... It's like what they always said in those dystopian movies and novels, where it's like, oh, you just basically order the type of mate you want, and
I shouldn't have done that.
And just wait until you get it.
You like come out the drive-through window or something.
Yeah. Like, can I get that number 3, please?
I guess that's how it'll be for the robots.
Well, we can't talk about that because that apparently is going to cure cancer, so can't criticize it.
It's going to give cancer, but that's my theory, I suppose.
Much like this game has monster in a box, so that's cancer in a box.
Oh, man. This boss is actually pretty tough. It's funny because I was under the impression that I was over-leveled.
You know, what is it with these hacks and they like the changes really come into play around this point in the game? Because didn't like the Golbez edition, the changes started sometime after Mount Ordeals?
It's been a while, but you might be right.
Like, there were obviously changes before that, as is the case in this edition too, but it just seems like things really go off the rails at this point. I don't know if it's like a comfort thing, if this is their safe space or what.
Hey, BLT. Just enjoying some Final Fantasy here. Well, maybe enjoying. I think I'm about to die.
You probably need to add some G to that BLT.
Also, I don't know what the point of Kain having white magic is yet, because all he has is scan.
I don't know either. I thought that was a nod to the after years.
I thought so, but we're dead. Wow, this was actually... a little bit triggering.
I was about to say you need to become a games journalist now, and
Ask for an easy mode.
yeah.
I guess we'll try to level up outside a little bit. I don't. What the hell? Oh, maybe I can get away with fighting encounters inside, but on the bridge before the boss or something. I'll try that.
As I have done before.
It does work on the very beginning.
Well, I did it on one of the mountains, so I'm not sure for the tower, but I think so. I think I've been on encounters before.
I should have used Omni Slash. Yeah, I think we might be in the wrong Final Fantasy dimension for that.
Yeah, we're in a good Final Fantasy.
Ouch. Uh-oh. Welcome to Controversial Final Fantasy Opinions.
I was about to say, is this going to be the next tank controls argument? Is somebody going to leave the stream because of my opinions on Final Fantasy VII? Actually, when I bought it, when it came out as a kid, I just thought it was just okay. Yeah. I remember playing it, and I was like, well, because at that point I just really started getting into the series. I played the first one on the NES when I was like 5, but all I could remember back then was ineffective and terminated. I don't know how, as a 5-year-old, I could read those words, but I did. Well, I like Terminator 2, so that's how I knew terminated. But I don't know how I could read ineffective. But anyway, I had just gone back to playing 4 and 6 a lot, and so I was like, this is just not as good as those games. So like, it was okay, but I remember after I beat it, like 2 months later, I just bought Final Fantasy VI, and I mean the actual Super Famicom one, because even back then the Super Nintendo version was too expensive. So
they were also at a really
like,
really weird point when it comes to the graphics too. Like they could do the FMV scenes that looked okay enough, but the actual models,
but the blocky polygon,
were like little Lego guys, but not quite.
Yeah, it took them a couple of games to work that out. They, I think they said that Parasite Eve was supposed to be somewhat of a tech demo, and preparing for Final Fantasy VIII, at least in the visuals department, which is why the character models look very similar. They look very realistically proportioned, because 9 went back to
more super
kind of
deformed type.
Yeah, but I mean, it actually looked, well, it looked decent back then. I'm sure we would say differently nowadays, but it looked good back in 2000.
I have not played much Pokemon at all. FF9 thoughts. I've actually only watched a friend play very little of it, so I don't really have a solid opinion on it. I think I would probably enjoy it better than 7 and 8 though, because it's more of the fantasy and kind of try. I guess the point was to try to go back to the more old school style, right? At the time.
Yeah, because that was supposed to be the last one in the series. So they wanted to do more of a tribute to the series and go back to its roots. And I think overall they did okay. I don't think I would ever say it's my favorite, but certainly of the PlayStation trilogy, it is.
One of my friends, he told me the other day that it's his favorite.
I actually never owned the game.
I couldn't really, disagree, because I've never played it for myself. So, I mean, I'm sure it won't be my favorite, because I feel like I already have those established, but it could be, I guess, among them potentially.
Yeah, it could be potentially. I actually never owned it. My brother might have owned it at one point, and my wife had it when we got married, so I actually did not beat it until after we got married, because I had a save from years before, and I was like, you know what, I'll just finish the game, because I think I was trying to fight Ozma, which is one of the special bosses, and I was like, you know what, I just want to beat the game and not waste another 5 to 10 years not playing it because of that stupid boss. So I just beat it, and then I was like, yeah, if I ever want to do it the right way, then I'll do that. Because the Ozma's hard. It's just that the characters I prefer to use don't really work well with when you're fighting him. So like you would need to use like Quina and Freya and somebody else and Steiner. And of those characters, the only one I never really liked that much was Steiner. All the characters I pretty much liked, but Steiner was just my least favorite. I can't even say I don't like him. It's just my least favorite.
I guess that's pretty good, as long as there's not like a hated one.
Well, Amarant I thought was kind of useless. Like, okay, we just needed a character who could be the monk archetype, and we have a guy who everybody's calling a bandit, and so you would think he would be a thief, but he's actually supposed to be a monk.
BLT said, this is my favorite FF, but I could admit it's purely nostalgia that puts it at the top for me. So how much do you think that that comes into play when thinking about your favorite Final Fantasies?
In my case, for the longest time, 5 was my favorite. And it was only after just realizing that I had a lot more availability of 4 there. I just started to say 4 was my favorite. But I will say that I've actually never owned a copy until, once again, I got married. Except for Final Fantasy Chronicles, I did have that. Yeah. But I never had a Final Fantasy 4 copy at all until I got married, because my wife has she has the Final Fantasy 2 on Super Nintendo. So I actually had it more available to me at the time, where renting wise, and I actually owned Final Fantasy V, because back then, you couldn't just get imports like that, so you had to go to a certain store that doesn't even sell imports anymore. That was on the back of EGM, I think, and buy it from them. And so I did play that a lot, but when I bought it, I just started learning Japanese maybe like 6 or 7 months ago. So it wasn't like the attachment I would have to 4 is different. So I do think nostalgia probably comes into play there, just because it's like, oh, I can remember reading this and remember the emotion. Whereas with 5, it's like, yeah, I kind of remember that happening, but I don't remember. Like I played through it again kind of recently, and I was like, oh yeah, I don't even remember them saying what they actually said there. Whereas with 6 was always hard to get, but that was actually the first game I ever imported, because that's what I was going to say after I bought Final Fantasy 7. Like 2 months later, I'm like, I'm just going to buy Final Fantasy 6, and I was like, well, you can get the import for $20, or you can get the Super Nintendo version for $70, and like, oh, well,
$20 is a pretty great deal.
If all I have to do is learn Japanese, and I pretty much played the game so much where I don't have to know how to read it to get to the end of the game, then I think I'll spend the $20. So that's what I did, and learned Japanese as a result. And
all the fake deaths in 4 got really ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, I guess that is the one. That's probably, like, for me, it's probably the one story flaw that I would say stands out the most. But
I'm glad they fixed it in the GBA and Complete Collection.
Like where you could use them later on.
Yeah, because that was originally the plan from what I read. They wanted to be able to use them later on, but they just didn't. They didn't know how to do it at the time, and they didn't have time to actually figure out how to develop that. That's why 6 is the only one of the Super Nintendo ones where you can actually do that.
Yeah, poor Tella was the only one that really died.
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at how they made his stat growth, it's like, yeah, they really made him crappy. It's like, yeah, when we first played through the game, we're like, oh yeah, this guy's awesome. He's a sage. He can use black and white magic. He can do all these awesome spells. And then once you play it as much as I guess I have, and you're like, oh,
actually try to level him up and stuff.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is easily the most useless character, because his stats go down when you level up. Whereas at least it's like, if you can get Palom and Porum to level 53, where they have the same spells, including Meteor, as Tella, then it's like, yeah, a level 54 Porum or Palom versus a level 54 Tella. One, Palom has more HP at that point than Cecil does as a Dark Knight on that same level.
Yeah, so I did that like once, and I did it in the Barren Waterway.
Because you got Quake or something, right?
And I didn't bother with Tella though. I just killed him off because I figured he was pointless to level up. So that helped a little bit with the experience points.
The reason I just leveled up everybody and didn't kill anybody is because I believe at that point the characters you get, the levels average out, so they're the average of everybody you've had in your party. So obviously, law of averages, the more high level people you have, the more high level people will join you. So when you get Yang back and all that, they'll be high level. Kane will be, Rosa will be, Rydia will be. Edge is the only one I think that he doesn't average out until I think the moon.
I really wasn't planning to have to do any grinding. I didn't realize there was a boss right here.
Yeah, it's sad that I know this, and I assure you guys that I have sex on a regular basis, even though it sounds like I don't, because I have too much information about 20-something, almost 30-year-old video games. But I also used to remember the points when levels would average out in Final Fantasy VI, because if you do the Let River trick,
yeah,
they don't average out until after you get the airship, I think, because I think Locke is the one who takes forever to average out, and I think it's when he's going to Thamasa where he actually averages out.
Oh, hey, Blasto, how's it going? Been a while.
Yeah. I only know that because that's my favorite character in the game, so I would have a bunch of 5,000 HP people, and then this one, I actually would go through the point of killing everybody off in Mount Colts and to get him to level 24 or whatever gets him to 1,000 HP. So at least everybody has 4-digit HP.
I should probably cast slow. What am I doing? That might help quite a bit. Although,
yeah, this could be like Dragon Quest where status effects on bosses actually do something.
That didn't work, but that was a stop one.
I don't know if you know that, but hint, hint.
Yeah, I remember that they made a big deal out of that, especially with the DS version. Like, status effects are a lot more useful than they were in the old vanilla Final Fantasy II. But that's because they butchered the original product, so...
Yeah.
I mean, a Dark Knight with fight and item. Greatest class ever.
Well, you see, the Americans just couldn't handle the difficulty of
managing party member skills.
An additional, one additional party member skill. It's pretty much comes down to one per character, except for Yang. I think Yang they took 2 away, but it's pretty much 1 per character. Otherwise, because Tella doesn't have recall. I don't remember. No, the twins had twin magic still, I think. But they didn't have like boast and false tears, so that Porm wasn't pretending to be social justice. I wonder if
safe is like protect. It is, right?
Yes.
I'm casting that then.
Oh, I think Edge kept all of his, and then Rydia kept hers. Rosa, of course, could not keep prayer because you can't have religious references in video games. With all the other fantastical things that occur in a Final Fantasy game, hence the nomenclature.
You would think that that would actually be acceptable because, the whole, it's fantasy anyway.
Yeah, but apparently not.
Although I guess the claim was that it was offending the people that were invested in it, so I don't know how true that is. But
I don't really know who was allegedly offending, because it's like I'm not offended by this. I'm offended you took it out thinking I would be offended. I'm not offended that there's a spell called Holy and there's a command called prayer and
Yep, Final Fantasy VI is the one where you fight the train. The good old Phantom
Well,
train.
you suplex it. Where you suplex the train.
That is a must.
You know, as a kid, I never really thought about the logistics of that. I was just like, oh, I'm going to just use the suplex blitz. And then, of course, it became a meme where somebody's like, yeah, suplexing a train. I'm like, yeah, I guess that is ridiculous.
Wow. Heat Ray still is a very terrible
Annoying.
attack. I think we're doing a little bit better, though, because of the slow spells. So that actually seemed to be beneficial. Now, those don't wear off, right? After a amount of...
I thought they did wear off.
Suck.
Unless I'm thinking of 5.
Just gonna play it safe.
You know, it's actually somewhat disappointing that 5 never had a class like the Dark Knight in it. 3 supposedly did, but I don't really consider that. Another thing, speaking of which, another thing I didn't like about the DS is that the Dark Wave ability, they took that away. And it was basically just Yang's
oh, yeah, that's right. They
charge
changed
up.
that. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't need, because then I was like, well, then maybe they took away Yang's charge up, and this is going to be the new charge up, so that you actually get a penalty other than losing a turn to double your strength, and then I find out that didn't happen, and so it's like, what's the point of having a dark attack that's just an existing attack?
Okay, I guess I'm not seeing
had.
things. That boss was actually only worth 1,500 XP and GP.
Oh, I guess.
Wow.
I guess you really do need to become a games journalist.
Yeah, I need more clicks for cash.
Maybe that should be a website, Clicks for Cash.
It's probably one of those, I don't know, one of those weird coupon websites or something.
Yeah, you know, I actually used to do those when I was like 18, 19. I only did like once or twice as a way, you know, when you're that young and you're just like, I'll do anything to make money. And you're like, I'll do this because, yeah, it's not going to make me a lot of money, but I know I can do a lot. And if I were smart, what I would have done was write a program to just automate the clicks. But
do they work all right?
You live and you learn. I mean, I got paid, but I would not recommend doing it again. It's like, it's not really worth the effort. And I'm sure at this
10
point,
10 cents an hour.
Yeah, that pretty much. It's like, oh yeah, well, you know, back then when I was 19, a check for $30 wasn't a lot, but at least it was $30. You could do, as a 19-year-old, I could do a lot more with $30 than I can now.
That is true.
The kind of bills I had were very different. It's like, oh, I had to pay half of rent. Half of rent and half of utilities for a small apartment that was probably $500 a month or something. So wow, $250.
Back when $500 rent felt like a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now, you know, PayPix just give that to eThoughts, so $500 is nothing, I guess.
Jeez.
Or, well, I mean, they're still the one that gave, what, like 20 grand?
Oh, yeah. And I don't remember the amount the one guy gave, but he gave like thousands of dollars and then was upset after it was exposed that she was married.
Yeah. What can you say about that one, other than you played yourself?
Yeah, I don't really know how you could be upset at that point.
Like, what did you think was going to happen? You were going to just...
Well, they were going to meet up at TwitchCon. and things would
all that makes me think of is, you know, I would have taken you to VidCon. And, to meet all these YouTubers, like, wow. I can't imagine why she would cheat on you, because that's what happened, right? Didn't she cheat on him or something?
She was the Bunty King thing. She was in a relationship the whole entire time she was in a relationship with him.
Okay. Didn't cheat, but she lied.
Supposedly, things were bad, but couldn't leave him, kind of thing. That excuse.
Yeah, that's believable. We've all heard that one before. I don't know how many times I've heard, well, I'm actually married, but, the marriage is falling apart. And not me personally, of course. Other people have told me that. But yeah, I was like, okay. Well, when you got the divorce papers, then maybe we can talk, but I'm not gonna.
It's a good way to end up.
Yeah. Because then I haven't seen this happen, but I've heard it happen before where it was like, oh, well, I just did that because I was mad. Now I'm over it. Now we're back together. I mean, there was a Fresh Prince episode where that happened, right?
I think so.
She was like, oh, we were just going through a hard time, but we patched things up now.
That's the way to do it.
But at least you made me feel better. Okay.
Oh, yeah. It was the one where he was with Carlton, found the older woman, and she was a teacher, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it turned out she was married.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Married, I think, to one of the guys that he was hosting an event for.
Yeah. I can't believe I still remember that.
I can't believe I still remember it either. I haven't watched that show in forever.
I saw some clips not too long ago, but other than that...
Although, given the movies that are coming out, it feels like I'm still in the 90s.
Somebody did a... it was like a Fresh Prince reboot trailer, but it was serious instead of a comedy show. So
yeah,
kind of like how they did the Pokemon one years ago.
Yeah.
It was actually pretty funny. I mean, if they really made it, it'd be corny as hell, but just knowing that it was a parody trailer, I guess, made it all right.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but I know about it. They did try to do a live action, not really, I guess kind of parody, a long time ago, a couple of years ago with Daria, and then all I remember is reading the comments and people were like, you couldn't have gotten this any more wrong than you did. Like, why would Quinn be throwing together a reunion party for Daria's graduating class, and why are you acting like she never had a relationship before when she did? And like, that's another show I used to know too much about.
Scratch Point, you should come on Killstream tonight. You're always a good co-host. Well, I appreciate that, but I'm not 100% sure when I'm going to be wrapping this one up. Maybe if I have some time, I'll stop by, though.
They sure do like your appearances on that show.
Sometimes there were some people, trolling in the comments, but there's always like that one that's like, these guys suck. Get Gator and Zidane back. You can't do better. I was just like, well, just you can call in. I mean, if you've got the co-hosting chops. I mean, I get it because people get used to the certain personalities, and then if they're not available, then it makes a lot of sense that you would notice a difference.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, they won't be getting used to them anymore.
Oh boy.
Oh, because they are, I don't know what you want to call it, but they're basically, if they want
Gator
to,
was already back on not too long ago, so the whole narrative of they all hate each other now is obviously false. No, nobody keeps me from showing up. I was just being silly. I don't really care about that. Used to detractors, it's fine.
Yeah.
I I take it with a grain of salt. Like, obviously there can be genuine criticisms, but like something like that is just super subjective, and you know that it's because, you know, they're used to who they're used to. So I don't really take it personally.
Yeah,
the wrong way.
especially if they're like kids or something, then it's like, yeah, they're just.
But I like to
gotta
tease people when they say things like that. I always like, and and it's an open forum. That's like the best time to be like, well, if you can do better, show up. But they never do. So.
Yeah, a similar tactic you have used is I'm tired of debating this on Twitter. If you want to talk more about it, come on stream, and it's amazing how many people.
I guess I have to give the. Let's see, what did we call him?
There was Intel
yeah, that's
Jones.
the guy. I guess I have to give him credit because he eventually showed up.
Yeah, and then Goblin Slayer 69.
Oh yeah, Goblin Slayer Critic 6969 because he was being. I guess he thought he was being cute because of the way I titled the video, but I didn't know. I mean, I titled it that way not to label him, but it was because that was literally what he did on the video.
And just so for you to end up making him cry.
I never heard from that guy again.
And then the most recent garbage fire.
We haven't even spoken
YouTube
about
Renegade.
that since, I don't think. Jeez. The thing is, I don't know if anybody was there for that stream. The YouTube what did I say? I just called it like garbage fire with a brainlet or something, I think. If anybody saw that On Point episode, he's still bitching about me on Twitter.
Even though you're blocked.
Even though I'm blocked.
He blocked you.
I don't understand what the point. But it's like, he said he won. So if he won, why is he the only one still going on about it? It just, I don't even care if you think you won. It doesn't matter. The way I look at it is when it comes to those things, like, if you want to do like a winner or loser or whatever the people that watch decide, that's on them. I can't tell somebody, oh, I won, therefore it is true. It's just like, I let whatever I said stand, and then whoever watches it, whatever they think, it's fine.
And clearly that shows that he won, because he's still talking about it. That was what, 2 months ago?
Yeah. But the weird thing is that the few that I've seen, he tags me when he's making these offhanded comments in arguments with other people, as though those people will know who I am. I'm not even. Yeah, it's known.
It's unrelated stuff. It'll be like, oh, you're just being just like this one guy on Scratch Point's stream with me. It's like, so you're just drawing attention. You're drawing more attention to your autism by telling people that you were on the stream with this one guy, and any normal rational person is going to watch that if they want to watch 5 hours of it and say, yeah, you really had made no point there.
The thing that bugs me about it is that I talked to him one-on-one for probably like 2 hours, and then I got permission because people were wanting to call in or whatever, if he was all right with that. Because if he wasn't all right with that, I was just going to end the stream, because we had pretty much hit like a stalemate. We were both made whatever points we were trying to make, or if you want to call that a point. And then
it isn't on point.
And then he said yes. So that's when I pulled other people in. Now granted, it did get a little crowded, but if at any point he didn't want to do that, obviously could have just pulled back. I could have, said, okay, let's clear it out or whatever. So the narrative after the fact of I'm the victim and I got ganged up on is just pathetic.
He did. Well, remember, he dropped off for a minute and then he came back later.
That too.
So he really can't say he's the victim, because he came back. It's one thing if you're like, okay, well, I just sat here and took it the whole time. You still wouldn't be a victim because you could have left any time. But he left and then he came back. He left, he rage quit because he was wrong, and then he came back and more people told him he was wrong, And then he did the same thing. He eventually just rage quit again. And then he went to go blocking everybody and then talking about them on
Those
Twitter.
are the streams that are they only come around once in a while. You can't really plan something like that.
You can't forecast those things. So if any of you are training to become data scientists, don't try to come up with a statistical model for this.
There you go. I mean, they do tend to be the most entertaining. I mean, I guess it's probably because it's sporadically, but oh wait, did I miss a door? Is that what happened here? Or do I get those later? I couldn't have missed a door. I'd like to say no.
Well, you know that you do need to consider consent now.
Damn, I really hope I
like
do
those like those problematic consent condoms.
I didn't even I saw that going around, but I didn't I didn't look into what the story was behind that. I just basically saw the headline.
Yeah, I still don't know why it's problematic.
Or even how they work. What do they mean? It takes 4 hands to open it. How?
I mean, what if it was Goro? Then
then you have a problem.
No, you have quite a few problems then. But I don't know what they're getting at. I just, as I do with nearly every Twitter moment, think they're all asinine.
Yeah, the Twitter moments are pretty bad. The most recent cringy one was the D&D thing, like Dungeons and Dragons selfies. And this spawned because supposedly Saturday Night Live did a skit or whatever that generalized D&D players or whatever. But that, I guess, like looking into it a little bit more, apparently they didn't even specifically mention Dungeons and Dragons, so it's kind of confusing to me how they looked into it like that or read into it that way and decided to be like hashtag not all nerds or whatever. It's like, I don't know. I feel like people are way too concerned with what other people think about what they're doing or what they enjoy. I don't care that much if somebody doesn't like my hobby or whatever. I don't need social network validation for it. I mean, it's cool. Like, it's cool, okay, to occasionally talk to somebody that enjoys the same thing or whatever, but you don't. It's not necessary to continue. Or if somebody thinks like, oh, yes, all Dungeons and Dragons players are fat basement dwellers or whatever. That if you know you don't look like that, why do you care?
Because they really aren't D&D fans. They're posers. Because you have to remember, you come from a time when being into those things and other nerdy things was not
popular at all.
Socially acceptable. Yeah, it wasn't even socially acceptable. I mean, remember when it was like, oh, D&D is devil worship or whatever dumb
that
thing.
was going on too.
So it really is, since what, 07, 08, it's been cool to be a nerd. So now everybody, in order to show that they really are, they're part of the club, they're like, oh, well, we're not all like that. Some of us take selfies. I'm like, I don't think any long-term D&D fan cares anything about selfies.
I mean, what is it? First of all, the game is complete fantasy, and the idea is that it doesn't matter who you are, because in the game you can be literally anything that's part of the world. So,
well, remember that one D&D post you showed me where somebody was like, can I make a character that's an atheist?
Yeah.
And it's like, somebody was like, in a fantasy world where there are confirmed to be gods that exist and are real, you want to be an atheist. Why?
It's
exactly?
Like basically makes you the flat earther of the.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that could be fun if you played it like that, but if you were being completely serious, that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately this was obviously unironic question, but yeah, if you played it ironically, then it
I
would be
think I
great.
have to go
But then
back.
remember, then I think you showed me all the like inclusive, the ones where it's like, oh, it needs to be more inclusive, or I remember reading one where this guy was like, oh yeah, we used to have D&D gatherings with this guy, and then he started bringing his girlfriend in, and she wanted to bring more social justice stuff into it, so they said they canceled the D&D gatherings. They really just went and created another one without
Yeah.
them. Because she wanted to create all the rules and everything, but she didn't want to DM because they were like, well, if you want to do all that, then you can just be a DM and then you can set those rules. But she's like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a DM. I just want to tell you what to do.
Was that the Reddit one, or was that the? Because I'm sure there's been multiple stories of that. Or was that the one that Duncan
That
Idaho shared on Twitter? This was a
Yeah,
similar one
that
to
one was
that.
definitely Reddit. That one was definitely Reddit. But it could have been on I think it was on a rage thread on the Dick Show subreddit, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's really annoying. I don't even understand the purpose of things like that. It's just like it's a game. Why does it have to be tailored to something completely unrelated?
Well, why do you have to go attend, or why do you get incentivized to go attend some social justice rally just to attend it for an English composition class? Please tell me where the composition part comes into going to listen to LGBTQ plus and what was it, Reds something for social justice or something? Like what? Please tell me where the English composition part comes into me sitting and listening to a bunch of people talk about how they're oppressed
You had to
and
take like a
all
photo
that.
or something. So
Yeah, you had to stay there for at least 45 minutes and take a photo of yourself there.
though, a lot of
But
everything seems
he
to come
can't
back to that.
he can't verify that somebody was there for 45 minutes. They could have just shown
Taking the
up.
photo
They,
and
they could have
left.
shown up. They could have shown up 45 minutes after it started,
This is the way.
taken a picture, and then show that with the timestamp. Because I at least said, well, back when I was in college, because this wasn't me, thankfully, that had to do this. This was another person taking a college course. But at least when they tried to indoctrinate me years ago, decade and a half ago, in classes like that, you at least had to write something about what happened there before when you turned in the assignment. You didn't just take a picture of yourself and say, oh, well, I was there.
Yeah.
So it's like I look at that and I'm like, clearly you want to you want to spread a certain
But something
narrative.
like that, it's like if they had you do a writing assignment or whatever, then I question: would you be judged on your writing skill, or would you be judged on whether you or not praise the event in a particular way?
My observation of how the class is run, I'm tempted to say you'd be graded on both. And what would happen is if you didn't write well, but you had the right opinions, he would probably be lenient on you or give you a second chance. But if you,
Did miss it.
but I'm saying that based on back when I was in college. But it could be in today's society that you can just claim that, well, you are making me adhere to European standards of grammar
Oh, boy.
and prose, and therefore you are oppressing me. And
I mean, see, that's just weird to me because, like, given the country that you're in and what the language the majority of people speak, or the language that when the country started was spoken, that seems like it makes sense. But I guess I'm just living in a different world or something.
I guess the lingua franca just doesn't matter. But I mean, I've seen a picture and
Soy on the menu.
I don't know. Yeah. What I was going to say is the person that's taking the class even said that and doesn't know anything about this social justice stuff. Like, oh, that looks like the feminist type. Like, okay, well, that's what that person means when she wants to say soy boy. She says, oh, look, he looks like a feminist.
There we go.
But yeah, it's
Hashtag
you
this
know,
is what a feminist looks like.
yeah. Because she was even saying, like, I feel like I kind of already am setting myself for the expectation that I will have to write in such a way to appease that, like, to appeal to this guy's political views, because I'm sure if I provide my real opinion that I'll probably get points deducted, and it's like, I just want to get through this stupid class, so I'm just going to pretend that
that kind of sucks. I mean, I kind of understand the point, just because you want to get through the class, obviously, but it sucks that they hold that over your head when it's unrelated.
Yeah, because I've known people even way back, even before I was in college, that told me, yeah, we had professors. It's like they just failed me because they don't like me, and they had no other reason. They just found a way to make it work.
Loophole.
And yeah, and I think I've only really had that once happen. I don't like the guy. Many people don't like the guy. Even people that got good grades from him, a lot of them were like, yeah, you basically just have to make him sound like he's a genius. And I knew I already lost that battle when I insulted the textbook that he gave us for that class. So it's like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work. But other than that, every time I've done that, I've gotten away with calling something stupid if I thought it was stupid. So that's why I was like, back in the old days, if you took an English class, you didn't necessarily have to like the thing in order to get a good grade. You just had to, if you didn't like it, you had to not like it in a certain way. Because I remember I had an assignment where I had to read this book and I had to write a review of it. These are on online classes, and the big thing, if nobody knows about a lot of these online classes, is they force you into doing these dumb message board activities.
Yep.
So a lot of your grade is based on you participating on the forum. You have to
interact on the forum and stuff.
Yeah, so one of my assignments was that I had to go to that forum and review the book in a post. And I remember reading through everybody else's, and it was a book called Erasure. I mentioned it before. I mentioned this story, I think, a long time ago, where it was a book that was written. The main character, I believe, was an instructor, a college instructor. I think he was an English PhD or something. He was also a writer, which means he was unemployed, really. And what he would do, what he said. So in the first 5 pages of the book, he talked about how he didn't believe in race. And every time I've heard somebody tell me that, especially because the main character is supposed to be black, so every time I hear somebody who is not white tell me, well, no, every time I've heard somebody tell me they don't believe in race, they end up doing something that's inevitably either very racist or very racially motivated. Or they just separate people and form an opinion on them based on race, whether positive or negative. But he didn't believe in race. But then, like a couple of paragraphs down, he's like, "Oh, I take books or existing characters and rewrite them as though they're black." So I'm like, okay, so you don't believe race exists, but you take people like historical figures like Cleopatra or somebody like that, and you rewrite them, or you rewrite their fictional biographies as though they were actually black.
That's strange.
But you don't believe race.
If you don't believe in race, how would you do it in a way that differentiates them?
Exactly. And then on top of that, he did there's kind of a stereotype I remember hearing a lot when you're growing up. And it's like, well, if you're black, especially if you're a male, and you kind of grow up either middle class or in a suburban area, you tend to be more fond of those with paler skin and blonde hair and all that. And so he didn't,
just because that would be your environment more often than not.
I think to an extent that's true.
Wouldn't that also be like the same argument though if you reverse it? Because when they call people like sheltered and not used to being around people of different races, so that would be the same idea, just reversed. So really, it's just a method of the same exact supposed method of acceptance.
Yeah, so usually when I hear people do that, the other part that goes in with that stereotype is they usually come off being really pro-black. Like, what was it? I'm Gonna Get You Sucker made a parody of that, where it was this guy who was like, he was all about the Black Power movement and everything like that, and he hated white people. And then his wife comes off, and I think it's like either Jan or Marsha from the Brady Bunch. And then like a bunch of just white kids with freckles and red hair and everything like that. Kids. And yeah, and so but then they all are in on it too, so they're all like, oh yeah, screw the white man and all that. And so he had to do the son had to do a report, and he talked about how the white man was swine and all this other stuff, and basically how social justice warriors would make their kids write reports today. And you do see a lot of that, which is why I think I made some comment a long time ago where it was like, every time I see somebody that just goes like on the extreme on like woke blackness, they're always mixed race, or they're usually mixed race. They're usually half black and half white. Like the whole Hoppa thing. It's very similar to where I would see that if they were like half black or half white, where they go on the extreme, because they'll be like, oh, I hate white people and all this. And then you have people where both parents are black, like, I don't feel that way about white people. Everybody's a person, and you have to evaluate them all as individuals. And but they're never like that. And so this guy kind of felt the same way, because he was always talking about, oh, I'm going to rewrite these characters as black, but I don't believe race exists, because this girl that I'm not really interested in, but we just have sex, but I can't remember if he told her that he wasn't really interested in a relationship, like he just wasn't attracted to her. It was just because she was there, basically, that he goes along with it. But I do remember him writing it in the book, or the narrator saying that I don't really care about her. I'm not really attracted to her, but she's just here, and whenever she calls me, I have needs, so I just go along with it. And so he spends the whole book kind of talking about his experience growing up black. He doesn't believe in race, but here we go. Growing up black in a suburban environment, he idolizes his father. He respects his mother. He respects his mother, but in the kind of way where it's like, your mother stands for everything you are against. Because, spoilers, there's a point in the book where he's reading James Joyce, and he makes a valid complaint about why he doesn't like it. And his dad comes in and he asks what he thinks about that James Joyce novel. And he's like, I don't like it because James Joyce is really all about style, and there's not a lot of substance to what he writes. It's more just about the gimmick of, oh, I'm writing it from this point of view, or I'm writing it in this way, in this stylistic way. And he starts insulting him. His dad starts insulting him and calling him all these names, but he still goes and idolizes this guy. And then that led to a conversation about them going to church, and he comes to find out that his dad, and this is where I had an issue, because it's like, you could have just said something, but it's like his dad had just been playing along the whole time. He made everybody think that he was Christian, he had a religion, but he really wasn't. And so when his son said something, he started just insulting him. He's like, you're dumb. Why would you ever say anything about God that's not real and all this? And so it's like, okay, but then why are you guys going? Like, they're only going because their mom is going. But my whole problem is like, okay, you're humoring this guy, but you're still idolizing this guy who obviously is a fake. He's a liar. And then he comes to find out later that he's had an affair, and he's had a child from that affair that he's kept hidden for 30-something years. And so he spends the rest of the book doing two things. He writes a book because he gets frustrated that he sees this author who gets a lot of media success, because she writes this book that sounds like the kind of typical early 90s ghetto stories, like Boys in the Hood and all that. But the author actually grew up in the suburbs of Ohio. So he gets upset because it's like, okay, this girl is no more urban than I am. She grew up in the suburbs, but because she went to visit her cousins one summer, she writes this very fictitious narrative, and she's getting on all these talk shows, and she's doing all these things. And so he tries to write what he calls as a parody of that. He tries to write a parody book of that. And so that's what's one of the two things he does in the rest of the book. He writes the parody, which is awful. So it's a book within a book. So you actually read the book that he writes while you're reading the actual book. Okay. And it's the most cringe-worthy way of writing that story. Obviously, that was intentional. And then he writes it and he's just like, okay, I'm going to throw this away. Obviously, what happens is that becomes very successful. And so now he starts to hate himself because the one book that he hates is the book that. Yeah, so then he has to play along as this character. So he can't just do it as himself. He has to act like he's a guy that grew up in that environment. And so first he tries to dodge the media for a while, and that doesn't work. And then he gets on and he wears like these ridiculous get-ups where he tries to make himself look like he's a thug or something like that. And he just hates himself more and more. Then the other part is that he spends the other part of the book looking up this his dad's hidden family. And of course comes to find out that the woman he had an affair with was white. I think she was either dead or just very old. So he ends up finding his half-sister. And he's thinking, I remember something about an AIDS clinic or an abortion clinic or something like that being involved. So every time I think about abortion clinics or somebody talking about that, I think of that stupid book. And that's how he finds her. I think she worked there or something like that. And he's thinking that, oh, I'm going to meet my half-sister and she's going to be really happy to meet me. And she's going to be so surprised that she had a half-brother. She had a whole family she didn't know about. Well, his half-sister doesn't really hate him, but she's just extremely disinterested because obviously she grew up without a father. Yeah. And the father kind of, his dad just abandoned him for his family that he knows about. And he sent all these letters, I guess, to her mom talking about how that was the one he truly loved and all this other stuff. But, he's not around them. And I think she had a child out of wedlock. So she lives in this dumpy apartment or something like that. And she obviously didn't grow up, with the best life. And he doesn't know how to, he's just totally deflated because he was expecting this to really change. And she's just like, I don't care. I don't know who you are. I don't really care. I don't have the greatest feelings about my dad because he wasn't around. So why would I like him? And they never the book never resolves what happens. Like if he ever changes how he feels about his dad or if he still idolizes him like an idiot. But he seems to be the only one who really cares about this whole having a half-sister. His mom, I don't think she was dead. I think she became senile or had Alzheimer's, so she just doesn't know what's going on anymore. And so he can't tell her, obviously, about it. Even if he could, she wouldn't know what was going on. But nobody else but him cares. And so he has to deal with the fact that the only book that people care about that he wrote is one that he wrote under a pseudonym and he hates. And then he had this whole family and this whole other side of his dad's life, who even then he's still idolizing him at that point. And they don't care about him at that much. And so the book really just ends up kind of just ending. And he doesn't really know how to deal with anything.
I feel like this needs that you cheated yourself meme.
Yeah.
You didn't grow, you didn't improve.
He didn't, and I remember writing that because I'm like, the only thing I can remember about this guy is that one chapter where his sister catches him masturbating, and she's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm masturbating," and he's in the basement, of course. Of course, he's in the basement. And then it ends with her saying something like, "Everybody does it," and he's like, "I know," and then he just goes back to jerking off while he's in the basement.
Well, then, that is quite the story.
And so when I finish reading the book, I'm mad because I'm like, this is garbage. Who assigned this book? Who thought I would like this? And everybody of course is expecting the black person in the class to like the book that's written about that narrative, and I'm the only one just laying into it. I'm like, this is garbage. I don't like the character. The author I don't know what he thought the value of writing a book within a book was going to do. We've all heard the story already. We all know the stereotypes. I mean, I could have written that book before. I wrote that book in my head before even reading it. Like, okay, the main character of the story within the story is going to get caught up in something. He's going to have a baby mama. He's going to do something. He's going to do a drug deal or something that gets him in a whole lot of trouble. And then the book is going to end with him running away from the police, basically, probably getting shot up. Yeah. And And so I'm like, okay, I don't. So of course, my question is, you're doing this as a parody, but what is it that you're trying to say? Because you're not really making. The only commentary you're making is that people will only listen to stories written by black people if they're written from an urban narrative, but you're not really making that argument very sound because your main character, I would never read the kind of stories that he writes. I don't care about Cleopatra if she were black. That's it. I don't want to see. I can just read the original story. I don't need to read. What else did he write about? I don't know, King Arthur or something. I don't need to read about King Arthur if King Arthur was from Wakanda.
Plus, a lot of books are just open to your own imagination. Some books have very vague character descriptions, so you could just imagine your version of what they look like in your head.
Yeah, and I didn't actually look at the author of the actual novel until years later, because I was like, this book was so stupid. I have to go. It was so bad. I even wrote back when I had a blog years ago. I even made an update on my blog about how much I hated that book. I did a review right then and there. That's how much I hated it. So I laid into the book. But even then, laying into the book, nobody really got mad at me for wrong think. People were probably afraid of that. They wanted to say, everybody else wanted to say it was great because they didn't want to go and sound, they did, they were probably proto social justice warriors. So they were probably afraid
maybe that criticizing it would come off as criticizing based on a bias rather than not actually liking the story.
Yeah, because when I finally did look at the author of the novel, I found out that he too was a college professor. I'm like, so is this a Mary Sue novel or what's going on here? Are you just writing this as though you were this character? Because this is terrible. I would never. I don't even know what I think. I might have kept the book just as a precautionary tale to anybody that that thinks that those kinds of stories are those are what we need to represent black voices or whatever. Like, okay, read this book and then tell me if you think that we need to have these people represent us.
I guess what I hate about that kind of stuff is whether you want to say maybe there's a lean or a slant towards a certain type of writer or whatever, it kind of just ruins the idea that writing and fiction and all that kind of stuff just transcends the differences between people, and you can enjoy it no matter who you are as long as it's a good story.
Yeah, I think he was trying to do that with the whole dad thing, but it just comes off as a guy with severe, he just writes a character that has really severe daddy issues. He doesn't really write a character where it would resonate with everybody else. And I can say that I have various family members who have been in actual real life situations like that, but they don't find it out when they're in their 30s and 40s. They usually know by the time they're 20 or 30, and maybe the generation, his dad's generation, might have found out about it when they were middle-aged, but usually the kids find out much earlier than that. So usually they're not in their late 30s or early 40s talking about, I've somehow my dad managed to keep this in the most conspicuous area in the basement and kept all these letters, quote unquote, hidden, that he wrote to the alleged love of his life that he couldn't even deign to spend the rest of his life with before he passed, because he was dead when in the current time period of the book, he's already dead at that point. And so and I'm like, okay, so all I see is a character with daddy issues. He worships his dad. His dad can do no wrong. Everything I see about his dad would make me hate. If I had a dad like that, I would hate that person as my dad. And it's you continue to worship him. I understand, everybody has faults and maybe you want to be forgiving of it, but the way that he even refers to his dad when he tells stories that are supposed to sound good, it's no, he sounds irredeemable. He sounds like he sounds like every other person that just kind of goes through life, kind of gives up, and doesn't bother to actually do something of value with himself. He kind of just clocks out at some point, and he occasionally chimes in with these pseudo intellectual diatribes about literature, about modern literature or postmodern literature, and he thinks that's a good enough excuse to make up for the fact that he was irresponsible, and I don't even know what he did for a job. So he was irresponsible, lazy, a liar, and a charlatan. And you want me to empathize or sympathize with your idolation of him. Like he's an idiot to me. Well, I mean, I already don't like James Joyce, as I don't like a lot of modern literature, modern art. I think at this point I don't have to explain why modern and bless you, why modern and
that was just out of nowhere.
Too sudden.
I guess I have to take.
But I don't think
thing to Eblon.
I guess so. Yeah. But I don't think I have to explain in this day and age why I have disdain for modern and postmodern anything. I think we've finally now seen the effects of that. I mean, back then I had to explain it because the kind of schools I went to, it was like modern especially, and then postmodern second, were the best types of literature to everybody, to the teachers, to, this is high school, to the teachers, to the students. I mean, you, as it is now, you were an intellectual if you were a fan of modern and postmodern literature. You had to like Kurt Vonnegut, you had to like James Joyce, can't remember the guy's name, F. Scott Fitzgerald. You had to like, who's the other person I'm trying to think of? Ray Bradbury, but I can understand that. George Orwell, because everybody had a copy of Animal Farm in 1984, and I went to a very different high school, for those that are curious. So what would be considered unpopular at most high schools was popular. So carrying around Animal Farm in 1984 in your book bag was a very popular thing to do where I went to high school, and these people just loved and worshipped all of these writers. And I'm not saying that they're all bad, but you couldn't talk about like stuff like Journey to the West. The only reason I knew about Journey to the West is because I was studying Japanese, and then of course, Dragon Ball Z was popular at that time. So, classical Chinese literature, never talked about it. Definitely would have never talked about classical African mythology and stories like that. Didn't even really talk about classical Greek stories that much. I didn't really read a lot of classical Greek literature until I was in college. I didn't read a lot of it in high school, so they really did put a preference on modern and postmodern literature, with the exception of maybe Shakespeare. That would be the only person, before the 19th century that would be considered great as well. But nobody was really fans, at least students weren't really fans of Shakespeare back then. Like, they kind of knew and they appreciated his work, but I wouldn't say that they were going around, reading Hamlet or any of the tragedies or any of the comedies or anything like that. They would be walking around with like Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake and like I said, 1984, and I think I saw Breakfast of Champions, and an Animal Farm, as I mentioned many times. So
Chrono Cross, huh? Well, Chrono Trigger is my favorite, or at least one of my favorite games. So I wasn't really too big on Chrono Cross, to be quite honest. It just didn't appeal to me because it was too different from, Trigger.
I'm going to try my best to not have a second rant, because I have a lot of things I can say about that. Remember, I would take screenshots while some of that stuff was unfolding and send them to you, just so you can understand where I was at when I read that stuff. Where I was at mentally as a person. Like,
yeah, I probably could have got further than I did, but I just didn't put the time in. So maybe I'll have to give it like a complete playthrough at some point. But
I did. So I will always say that disc 1 for me was okay. If I don't look at it as the successor to Chrono Trigger, and I just look at it as a game on its own, disc 1 was fine. I didn't have any problems with disc 2, or disc 1 rather, and I liked disc 1. Once we got to disc 2, that's when everything went down. That's when they started inserting all this stuff like, okay, the things that they did, with our, the characters that we know from Chrono Trigger, the characters that we enjoyed, and what they did to some of them, that's already strike one. It's like, oh, okay, okay, that's what Robo is now, sure. And then how they manage to, I don't like playing a game where they tell me the characters from the previous game, the main characters, unless that's what they were supposed to do in the beginning of the in the original game. So if they were villains in the original game, or they were the opposition in the original game, as say like Suikoden or Golden Sun or Shining Force 3 has done, then it's acceptable. But when they just out of nowhere just decide, oh yeah, the conflict that we have now, it's all because of the characters from the first. It's all their fault.
When basically in the first one it was resolved that they saved everything. Yeah,
but then it's like, but then it's like, oh, but they created an alternate universe, and so then all they really did is make Lavos stronger, and they made him the Time Devourer or something like that.
I can't imagine playing Chrono Trigger on the phone and having to do the rat catching part. That sounds like a nightmare.
My brother-in-law would always try to get me to play those games on a phone on an emulator, and like, it's never gonna work. Because all I do is I'll think about stuff like that. Like, I'll think, my go-to is always, okay, imagine playing Super Metroid on the phone.
Oh, no.
And then that's enough for me. Like, doing those wall jumps on a phone, no, not at all.
Yeah, that makes it a completely different experience almost. Wow, you tried to catch the rat for an hour straight. Oh, that is painful.
I mean, you played what, Final Fantasy VI? What was essentially the mobile version?
Yeah, on Steam, and it was an experience. I feel like it didn't do enough to make it to where I would prefer that over. In fact, it did the opposite. But I mean, if you're gonna redo a game like that, you have to add something to where I would want to choose it over the original version of it. So they definitely failed to do that, and I feel like the graphical direction is very strange.
I wasn't a fan. I didn't like what they did with Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 4 Complete Collection, but I will say Complete Collection at least felt like exactly what you're talking about. It felt like a game that added something to the original. So I could see myself playing. I'm willing to play it on the PSP because it has this, and this. I mean, that's the only one that has the interlude, right? None of the other ones do.
Yeah, PSP version is the interlude version, which I mean, obviously I haven't played the what do you want to call it? What is it? Steam version. So I don't think they ever addressed
Steam
that.
version is. Yeah, because the Steam version is based on the DS version, and then
years, but I don't think they added.
Yeah.
As far as I know, they didn't add.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I don't think they did. I think they just did the after years with the DS graphics, and then the DS version 4, which I don't know why they are acting like that should be the definitive version, because to me the DS version is not the definitive version.
The best part of Final Fantasy VI is I'm not a waiter.
It's great.
I do appreciate that part.
You already know this, but we did a stream how many years ago? Probably 4 years ago, where they were it was some Final Fantasy VI ROM hack or something, and they were saying that they were based on the Japanese version, and
something like that. They called them espers or something. I don't remember.
Ginju. That's what they're. Yeah. And that scene they actually that is actually direct translation from the Japanese version.
Yeah.
The Am I a Waiter one. I mean, the literal translation is, "Do I look like a person that waits?" And from the Japanese, but it works out anyway. I always say, well, I say they intended it. They intended the joke anyway. Whether they believe they did or not.
I dislike Final Fantasy VIII. I dislike the characters and story, and the draw system is always a pain in the ass. Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. I mean, I could understand they're trying out new systems or whatever, but when you make a Final Fantasy game and I can't find any of the characters really appealing, then you have a big problem. Because that's like one of the main motivations to play. Like, you have to care about, the character's journey. If you don't give a shit, it's kind of hard to keep up with it.
That and the whole, as I keep mentioning, Disc 3 going to space. We have a man for a sorceress and we put him on the moon. I know it's supposed to be a her, but I mean, look at Sorceress Adele and tell me that's not a man. I'm not believing anything that anybody tells me. Sorceress Adele is a man. Even the Japanese version calls them witches, and it uses the kanji for women. And no, we're not doing that today. A Sorceress Adele is a man. And the fact that they're like
women or something.
Yeah, there we go. And the whole I played through it again a couple years ago, 2016. I'm like, well, let me remember why I hated this game. And then of course we get to disc 2 where we all grew up in the same orphanage. We just forgot because of the GF, and then that was nothing more than in a vehicle to have the final battle for disc 2. Like, because now that we know that, Sorceress Edia is going to be in the place where we all grew up at, and then we get to fight, and then we possess Renoa. Spoilers for anybody that hasn't played this awful game. And then we can't get Renoa to wake up for all of disc 3, but we gotta go to space because there's a man sorceress that's in space, and now all of a sudden she can wake up.
We have a lot of Final Fantasy VIII detractors today.
And then you, being the person who enjoys Final Fantasy IV, you can guess what happens when one of your characters is possessed by one of the villains.
Uh-oh.
So you go to space because you got to give something in order to stop Sorceress Adele, but somebody has the key to opening up his prison and letting him and unleashing him back into the world. The person who's been asleep for the entire disc and can't wake up, all of a sudden can, and guess what she does?
The character that can't wake up just reminds me of playing Dragon Warrior on the NES. Thou art still asleep.
Yeah, thou art still asleep. And so she pulls a Cain, or I'm possessed, and now I'm gonna give you the thing, and now I've unleashed lunatic Pandora on the earth, and now Sorceress Adele is coming with a legion of monsters from the moon, of all places, to attack you guys, and you have to spend the end of disc 3 fighting. Or you don't even fight her in the end of disc 3. You just walk around up in lunatic Pandora, and then all of a sudden you get to a random point in the dungeon and it says, please insert disc 4. Not even kidding.
There's a lot of fantasy stories that integrate the moon in some way.
Yeah, but at least
Goblin Slayer. In Goblin Slayer, the goblins are supposedly from the Green Moon, and I'm trying to think of what else. There's
Didn't the After Years have a green moon, Emerald Moon, or something?
I don't remember if they called it that, but there was. Yeah, the one that left came back or something, right?
Yeah, something like that. With a mysterious woman. All women are mysterious because I can't understand.
I like it when it's done well, but that sounds like an example of when they just kind of pull it out of nowhere, and you're like, wait, how does this even happen?
Well, yeah, I mentioned the example in Final Fantasy IV where once you got the airship and you were going to the underworld, you could go to that town where they were talking about the moon, and they were showing, you can look at it. So they at least started gradually making references to the moon, gradually for a game that came out in 91.
And then when Cain tells you something about, like when he returns to the party, he says, there's a story about how if you collect all the dark and light crystals, something about the path to the moon opening, and it's like, all right, they're kind of hinting here.
Yeah, whereas in Final Fantasy VIII, nothing. You don't hear anything until you get to that point in Disc 3, which is pretty much the end of Disc 3, that, oh, yeah, we sent this person whom you've never heard of until now. We sent her, we trapped him, in the moon with all the monsters, and I would think Lunatic Pandora was the key or something to keeping him imprisoned on the moon. And then now all of a sudden you got to go to the moon. You never heard about any other space travel in the whole entire game up until that point. Nobody was going into space, but now all of a sudden, hey dog, go to this super futuristic place that was locked off for a long time, like feudal Japan. Yeah, an 18-year-old combat soldier is now an astronaut. And not only does he take his girlfriend that can't wake up until all of a sudden she's out in the middle of space and goes in her spacesuit like Mario in Super Mario Land 2 to the moon to wake this guy up. And then, she screws everything up. And, of course, Squall forgives her for, destroying everything, because after you go to Lunatic Pandora, you go to Ultimisia's castle, and you can't go back to the original world thanks to her. So yeah, whatever. But then, they have to do something else. So they're like, oh, well, since we're already out in space, guess what else is here? Your airship.
Dun, dun, dun.
But you can't just get the airship. Can't just get the airship like you could in the first one. Once you got the floater, you can't just go find it and get the airship. You can't just get it like you can in 2. You can't just get it 500 times like you can in 3. You can't get the 8 million airships you get in 4, or the 3 that you get in 5 and 6 and 7, all that. You can't just go and get it. No, you have to go. Now the airship is a dungeon. And it's got these dumb animals. I don't even remember what those monsters are. They were color-coded monsters that you have to go and fight. And then you have a boss fight. And then Squall's trying to figure out, because, he obviously knows how to man a spaceship that's an airship too. He's trying to figure out how to get it away from the moon or wherever they're trying to get it away from the sun, so that they don't die and that they can send it all the way back to Earth. So you're
trying to say that the story writers for Final Fantasy VIII were high. Got it.
And not just any high. Like, this is beyond, like, Burger Time.
Maybe
seems
it
like
was
they were so
Lost Levels mushroom high.
Yeah. I mean, it was it was Parodius high. I mean, that game, if anybody's played, especially the Japanese version with the words of death.
Same guy who directed Final Fantasy VIII was also in charge of Final Fantasy X. That explains a lot.
Ha ha ha.
Man,
ha,
I saw the outfits of the Final Fantasy X characters again yesterday, and I was just like, what in the world?
The only thing I liked about the character I liked in Final Fantasy X was Auron, and I liked him because even that Tidus was annoying.
Yeah, he was, and out of everyone, he was dressed the least weird.
Yeah, of course he was 35. I mean, that's not even an excuse, because Lulu I think was 27, but 35-year-old, I guess he's got it together, and all these other people can't. Waka was annoying, of course, and I'm sad to say I don't have it. It's my wife's, but she had a Riku figurine, and least favorite person. I don't know if Riku is my least favorite person in that game. Probably is Waka, but she's a close second. I do remember beating the game years ago, and that's the first and probably last time I'll play it. I played 12 for about 30 minutes, and I said, "This is dumb. I'm not playing this."
Yeah, I couldn't bring myself to get into 12. I know some people like it a lot, but I just can't get behind that.
13 is the hallway simulator, and
I wonder if this part's gonna change up and we actually have to like fight Rubicon here or whatever.
My favorite of the fiends, back when they were called the Four Fiends.
Edge is about to get destroyed. Wait, what? For some reason I have to keep refreshing the YouTube window.
Well, Edge becomes king of Eblon, right?
I think so, yeah.
I guess you might call him an Edge Lord. Am I right, guys?
Taste the true
Oh,
Inferno.
that. Remember his little, I guess, ninja attendants he had? They were very useless and weak.
Oh, in after years, yeah, that was.
Yeah,
It was strange, a strange decision, because they made it into the final party, right?
I believe they did.
Yeah, I don't know. I just couldn't picture myself actually integrating them into the final party. I guess if they were
Why
just
do I
quest
need?
characters, like for his chapter or whatever to help out, like fill in soldiers, kind of like they did with the white mage and black mage, the generic ones, that might have
Yeah,
made a little bit more sense. But they were characters you could use the whole time.
yeah, and it's like, why do I don't need four other ninjas or however many there were, three other ninjas, I think. I don't need that. To be honest, the ninja class in Final Fantasy IV was not good.
Well, we could go on a rant, a comment section rant about how ninjas in Final Fantasy games should not be in the party or whatever.
Oh boy, there's not a Fairly Odd Parents fan in the comments section that's a brony, is there?
I forgot what that guy's username was.
It was Timmy Menard
Oh
from
yeah, there we go.
from Fairly Odd Parents. So
Didn't he have another one at some? Maybe not.
I think he changed it at some point.
Sometimes there are interesting
how-
people that show
how-
up for things.
Yeah, I wonder what happened to him.
I don't remember his channel, so because he used to post videos.
Yeah, and then he would have these long diatribes about how useless ninjas were in the Final Fantasy series, how much he hated Yuffie and Edge. Like, and it came out of
Because
nowhere.
he answered
It
the
was
questions
like,
wrong in the forest. That's probably what it stemmed from. Lifelong
yeah.
hatred.
So like at first it started off as relevant because it was on one of your Final Fantasy IV videos, and then all of a sudden it's just like any video you made,
Talking
he was
about that.
still talking about.
Oh, hey,
yeah.
Necro. What's going on? The egg. It's kind of boring when you kill it before it hatches. But I think when you do that, it's usually because it's a black lizard and you have the ice equipment.
Killing an egg before it hatches. What do you think you are, the state of New York?
Touche. No, we wait till the moment after it hatches and then...
Oh yeah. You know, we have to have one woman has to have 3 or 7 of them because it's effective, and then get surprised when they say if you get any more, you're not going to be able to have
children at all.
kids.
At that point,
Yeah.
I'm not sure you should be allowed to.
Yeah, I just find it funny that she went against their advice, like, don't do this because you won't be able to have another child, and then she did it anyway, and then she's now upset that she can't get
Hope you
pregnant.
drank your Soylent and
Huh?
disrespected your fan base. Jeff seems to be good at that. That's Mother's Soylent.
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube I saw today about the Deus Ex games. There's like a bunch of different quotes from it, and there's a kid that's asking for food, and I think the JC Denton's like, "Oh, I have some soy cakes or something." And the point of the video is to show like ways that you can be a douche in Deus Ex. So he basically talks to the kid, gets all the information he wants out of him, gives him the soy cakes or whatever, and then he kills him. And then there's somebody in the comments that's like, you for making sure that boy never eats soy.
Jeez.
I find it funny, like when that meme started off at first, there were a bunch of people coming out of the woodwork where it was like, "Oh, it doesn't actually do that. That was just there's a study now that shows that soy doesn't do that." And
I mean,
Soy's
given the fact that it's a cheap ingredient that they use to, that companies use to save money, do they really think there'd be no motivation for them to get a study that says that it has no negative side effects? Am I living in that world now?
they only think critically about studies when it's about things that go contrary to the narrative on climate change. That's the only time they're skeptical. Well, the oil companies funded that, but nobody with any self-interest would fund any other studies. Simply any anti-climate change studies. Those are the only ones that are funded with everything else is simply people that love knowledge. They just want the truth.
I see. Oh, rear assault by mad ogres. This sounds like a Me Too moment.
Yeah, it sounds like a mother's basement moment too.
Well, for his girlfriend anyway.
Well, and him too. I mean, he does hug that whatever that vacuum thing was
or something. I forgot what they're called.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Assassin dagger, 56 damage to kill a mad ogre.
And then what makes it worse is that his girlfriend's like, "Oh yeah, now my boyfriend is happy that when I tell him to go vacuum."
The worst thing I've ever seen from that person was the one where talking about like how depressed and miserable or whatever, and then right above that is the sales pitch post about buying, Patreon or Snapchat or whatever the hell it is. It's like, wow.
I think the only other kinds I love is when people have these stupid takes that go viral, and then the sales pitch is in the top reply.
Yeah, it's like the SoundCloud.
Like,
but usually they'll be
like,
I don't have a SoundCloud, but check out this charity
donate
or pay my rent or some crazy thing like that.
I think the first time I saw it, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it wasn't the Asian one that you told me about, but there was another Asian one where it was like that. The most annoying one was the one that where this person was allegedly, this man was allegedly laughing at this girl that wanted to be a CEO, telling her that it wasn't going to happen. And she claimed, of course, she wouldn't name the airline, remember, because she was like, I don't.
The journalist,
journalist.
That was supposedly a hero for sticking up for the abused teenager or whatever.
Yeah, and then she goes on for days with multiple responses per day that she goes and creates. Go look at this article. Go look at this article. Jessica Valenti wrote this great article about this. Go to Jezebel or this. Like, okay, what little credibility you had is now officially gone, because I'm not kidding. I remember just scrolling through and I couldn't even find another person's reply.
Yeah, I didn't even read though. At some point I was just like, okay, I see what's happening here. I think it's time to check out because there's way too many. Yeah, I think most of us can agree that Final Fantasy Tactics is an amazing game.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really heard anybody that's like, yeah, I don't really like that game. I mean, to be honest, the reason that I got a PS1, I had sold everything. I'd sold good games, which was a mistake. I sold my N64 and everything on it, and I sold Super Mario RPG, which in hindsight was not a good idea. To get PS1, and at that time Final Fantasy VII was about to come out, so I pre-ordered that, but I really wanted it for Tactics.
I think I learned about Tactics through 7 in the sense that it was on the back of the manual or whatever they advertised it, and then I was like, oh, this game looks so much cooler.
That's what made me try.
And Saga Frontier was on the back
Frontier.
Of there too, and I was like, oh, I really want that one as well. Why do I even?
Well, remember I told you about that guy who was made that very soy-filled retort when years ago when Play Asia was like, oh, we're still going to sell Dead or Alive Extreme.
The duck head guy or whatever, the bird avatar.
Yeah. So back then he had the unofficial Squaresoft homepage, and so I knew about all those games because they would cover stuff that was already out. So I knew like when Final Fantasy VII was coming out in Japan. I knew.
So back then I still didn't have a computer at home, and my connection to the world was like EGM, or if I went over to a friend's house, then I would have access to the internet.
Yeah, and back in those days, not everybody had it, but that's how I knew about a lot of that. But nothing really made me think about looking at. But
I did know about
Saga
PlayAsia
games
because of the whole. They used to advertise in the back of EGM.
I don't. I don't know how I knew about PlayAsia. I think maybe you told me about it because all I remember is Japan Video Games on the back of EGM. Because they would have they had that's where I got Final Fantasy V from, and they would have the picture of it or the box art of the game.
They had that. They had Dragon Quest VI. I remember a lot of those, and they used to list at the very bottom. They had like a whole, it was very very small photo, but they had a lineup of every Dragon Ball Z Japanese figure from like volume. They had them in volumes for some reason. They called the figures volumes, and they had like 1 through 42.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Japan Video, that's all they're still called Japan Video Games, but they don't sell video games anymore. They pretty much only sell like plush dolls and stuff like that. Are they still around? Yeah, but all they sell now are plush dolls. They don't sell. They still call themselves Japan Video Games. Last time I checked, but they don't sell video games. I don't really know why, but a lot of the places I used to go closed down like in the early 2000s, or they stopped selling imports. So that's around the time PlayAsia came around. So I was happy for that because it was like, okay, you guys have everything. And eBay was more reliable around that. That was when it became more reliable, so you could get stuff off eBay. Because before that, eBay was, I hated it. I tried to sell my copy of Final Fantasy VI, which I never ended up doing, and I couldn't do it because they never wanted to show it. But back then, when you were going to list something, they would charge you for it. So they would charge you $1, which I never paid. I was like 12. I wasn't going to do it. And I wasn't going to do it unless it sold. But they never displayed it. I put the auction out and everything back then when you could only auction on eBay. But they never posted it. So I was like, well, I'm not going to pay you for not doing something that you were supposed to do. So, no. But yeah, I was relieved when PlayAsia came out, because then it was like, oh, finally somebody that has stuff I was looking for. Because you mentioned Dragon Quest VI, and back then, any of those games were way expensive. They were like $70+ at any import store to get them. Now you go on eBay or whatever, you can get them for $10, $15.
Yeah,
but
sometimes you get really lucky and get them for like $5.
Yeah, I got, I think you sent me that link. There was a collection of it. It was basically all the Super Famicom Dragon Quest games for like $20, and I snatched that right up.
Yep. I got Chrono Trigger, the Japanese version, for $5, and it was complete.
I can't say that. I bought it, so I bought my copy in 2001, and it was from a store in Syracuse, I think. That no longer exists, and it was $44.
Yeah, I found them so cheap that I ended up with 2 copies of the Japanese version at one point.
That I did get Seiken Densetsu 2 for very cheap, which was funny because I paid back when Funko Land was around. I paid $44 for the just cart only for Secret of Mana at Funko Land, but I got Seiken Densetsu 2 complete for $11. On eBay, of all places. There are a couple of things I got for cheap, like the Magic of Scheherazade. I think I got for like $6 on eBay. Now you can't find it for that price.
Of course not.
And then remember the good old days when Breath of Fire 3 was, well, it's still expensive now depending on where you go, but when they were like, oh, it's Black Label, like every copy.
Yeah, there's no greatest hits version of that. I hate when they use that as an advertising tactic, because I mean it just makes no sense when that's the only version of the game that has ever been available. I mean, I still don't like it even when it applies, because it's just like you could see in the photo. But I guess they do it for people that specifically search that. I don't know any that do, but I guess it's a thing.
Well, that, and then they would add rare to everything. Everything was rare. And then they would do that annoying where they would spell look, but it was LQQK or L @ K. And speaking of back in those days, I've noticed that some of these people are doing what they used to do back then, where the game would be relatively decently priced, but shipping is like $8 to $18 or something. I can't remember which game it was for. It was either a Super Nintendo game or it might have been Deus Ex, but I think it was a Super Nintendo game that I was looking at, and it was like, oh, I think it was Mystic Quest, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, and it was like $20 or $30, but then it was like $18 for shipping.
Yeah, I hate when they do that. That's just ridiculous. I want to find that video game store, the retro game store, where they use the woman. Because I want to covered like the Mystic Quest and the overpricing of retro games, but I want to do that on a stream as well.
Yeah, I wonder if they're still doing that, because I feel like somebody else tried to do that now, where it was some woman and her comically oversized breasts and behind some game cartridges, and I don't think it was the same. I don't think it was the same store from the old days, but it might be. But yeah, I would love to see. Well, I would love to see that again, because that I remembered I first saw it. I think it was looking for Castlevania.
Oh yeah, New Resistance just pointed out that Secret of Mana is still $40 on Steam. The weird version that they just came out with.
Well, now according to my in-laws, now they let you play the original Super Nintendo music, so now you can toggle between soundtracks.
I guess that's a thing. Maybe it'd be nice if they let you toggle between games. Oh no, that's not gonna.
Yeah, but I do remember back when you made that video and everybody just railed on you for not being excited for it.
And then in the follow-up after the game came out, they were like, "Yeah, this game sucks."
Yeah. It's like, oh, you just don't appreciate it. And I remember everybody's like, well, the graphics are better, and they have to be, because nobody wants to play a game that still has the 16-bit graphics. So the graphics are better. And that's what they need.
I think I did this. I feel like I remember pointing out that they could have updated the graphics the way they did for the what is it called? iOS version, because they're still 16-bit style, but there's something different about them, and they actually look pretty good. I guess they're more maybe more textured. They look a little bit more like Chrono Trigger-ish, I would say.
Yeah.
You could easily look up a screenshot if you just put in like Secret of Mana iOS, if you guys want to see what I'm talking about. But I think if you're gonna update, you have to keep the spirit of the original version, and that's something they keep forgetting, it seems like.
Yeah, it seems like Capcom, based on what most people are saying, Capcom is the only one that seems to have gotten it lately with the Resident Evil 2 remake. I haven't played it yet because silly old-fashioned me prefers a physical copy, and I don't have a PS4, so
yeah, that's
I haven't gotten it yet.
Big problem for me too. When I can't get a physical copy, I usually try to wait for a price drop if I can't do physical.
Yeah, that's the other. There actually has been a price drop for that, but I'm waiting for a bigger price drop, because $40 is still not enough for me to say, yeah, I'll pay for a license to download.
Or I try to go after a review copy.
If you know what I mean. Much like your review copy of this game that you're playing right now.
I've gotten a few. Monster Boy.
I don't think I've ever gotten a physical review copy. I've gotten digital ones.
Monster Boy, Longest 5 Minutes. I know there's a couple more.
Those are the only two I can remember that you told me about.
Oh, the remakes of the Yakuza games. Yeah, there are more. I guess I kind of forgot about them because I don't think I really got around to streaming them. I'd have to look through my Steam list. The Monster Boy one they actually gave me on Switch, digital download.
Speaking of which, on the Switch, that game that you sold, that 3DS game you sold a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I didn't realize that was a sequel to Legend of Legacy.
I didn't know it was a... Oh, is it actually a sequel? I thought it was just kind of like the next game from that company in that style, I guess.
They are making it sound like it is a sequel to Legend of Legacy. Because now I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should try that, because...
Well, see, if that's the case, maybe they should have ported them into like a compilation cartridge or something. Yeah.
I'm hoping so, because I had that issue when I tried to buy Legend of Legacy a couple of years ago, and I've never felt compelled yet to go back to PlayAsia and buy the 3DS version. So, yeah, that would be a lot better for me if they just did a compilation.
You ever get into a battle, and then when you get out of the battle, you forgot which direction you're going?
Somebody is old and senile.
Yeah, that's, I do wonder sometimes. Skies of Arcadia. I've never played that. What is that on? There's a Dreamcast and a GameCube one, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, GameCube is a port with one added thing. Yeah. It is trigger warning. There is rape depicted in that, or attempted rape depicted in that game.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, I don't know how we're gonna deal with that.
I mean, to be a lighthearted fantasy.
Wait, crap! I already came this way then. I guess I'll have to try to get my hands on it. I've been doing very poorly at streaming games like all the way through, so I should probably try to finish this before I mix it up.
Yeah, you want to be consistent here.
I don't know, sometimes I get into like moods where I'm not sure if I want to finish, go all the way through, or I don't know, I get bored or sidetracked or other various things.
That was me officially on Monday. Because I got two things for my birthday a couple of weeks ago. I got Secret of Evermore, which was another game I sold to get Super Mario RPG, actually, and Romancing Saga 2, which I had never played and barely saw. I only saw like that couple of minutes where you played on Twitch, I think.
I actually did kind of enjoy that, but then at the same time, they didn't optimize the UI for mobile, or from mobile, I should say, and it just felt off.
Yeah, so I will say I did not buy that version. I bought the original Super Nintendo version, and I knew once that game came in that I was probably going to be I was gonna stop where I was at in Secret of Evermore. I'm pretty much at the end anyway. I played and beaten the game.
Secret of Evermore, a good game. I've never played it. I mean, I think it's good for what it is. If you like Secret of Mana, you should like it. I mean, it's not exact, but it's kind of based off of the same type of system.
Yeah, it has the same mechanics. It's not the same game. It's not a successor.
Yeah, they just kind of use the title and to kind of play off of the success, I think.
Yeah, that's marketers for you. A lot of people, when they bought it back when it came out, a lot of people bought it
expecting
thinking
it'd be a sequel, or
Yeah, and then it was like, oh, this is nothing at all like Secret of Mana, so this isn't good. But as people got over that, then their opinions changed, and suddenly it was one of the Super Nintendo classics, alongside with Super Mario RPG, which at that just similarly people didn't think that game was good when it came out, and now it's one of the best games of the Super Nintendo, they say. And so if you don't think of it as this is what we got instead of Seiken Densetsu 3, which we were supposed to get, but it I guess was too difficult to port, then I think you will enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good game as long as you don't go into it thinking it's a sequel of Secret of Mana. You should be fine.
Yeah, and if you understand that the developers are very American and Western, so it doesn't the dialogue is not like a JRPG. I made that joke last week where even the NPCs aren't like NPCs. Because they won't just keep repeating themselves over and over. If you keep talking to them enough, they'll say something.
Yeah, you get different dialogue. Wasn't it made first though? No, I think Evermore was what, 95?
Yep, 95.
Yeah, Secret of Evermore was 95, and then Secret of Mana was 93. If I'm not.
Yeah. Remember I said 93 was another video game industry orgasm. Yeah, that's when it came. Because I think in the US they wanted to make sure that they got it out before the holiday season.
Illusion of Gaia is another fun JRPG. I enjoyed that one a lot.
That, like Romancing Saga 3, I never got to play, and I always wanted to play until a couple years ago. I finally got the game complete in box, even with the full-length instruction manual, for $40.
Yeah, I have it, but I only played a little bit of it, but it seemed like it was good.
Yeah, Terranigma, I've had a hard time actually finishing and completing. I've never actually gotten the Soul Blazer. I have a review copy with me, but I've never actually gotten to... I said I was going to, but then Secret of Evermore and Romancing Saga came in, so I was like, yeah, I'll probably have to wait on that.
Super Mario RPG is definitely good.
Yeah, it's good. The only reason people say it wasn't good back then is because the kind of people that played RPGs back then, it's not like it is now where JRPGs are a thing and there are lots of people that there were lots of people that liked it. There was no popularizer of the genre yet at that point. So Super Mario RPG was supposed to be that, but you had a lot of old-time Dragon Warrior Final Fantasy fans that were like, oh, this isn't good, it's too easy. And
then I imagine you probably had Mario fans that weren't into RPGs generally.
Yeah, you probably had those, because that's back when he was mostly a platformer. You did have garbage like Mario is Missing and whatever that other one is called, Mario's or Luigi's Vacation or something like that. So yeah, you probably had those two, and it came out pretty late in the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, it was one of the later games. What, 96 or something? 7?
Yeah, it came out in 96, and so Final Fantasy 7 came out a year later. So, it was a popularizer, but it was not as heavily marketed.
It's kind of interesting how they pumped out so many games back then that were good quality, decent length. That seemed like a lot of work went into it, and yet they did it pretty consistently. Because if you think about it, it's kind of strange that that was right on the heels of Chrono Trigger.
Yeah. And Squaresoft was the developer for all of those. I think Chrono Trigger, the development on that started in 93.
Yeah, that was a long time, because there was some game that it started out as, or some game started out as that, and I can't remember how the story went. It was on that, I think it might have been on that cutting room floor thing or something.
Yeah, it might have been.
Because remember, then there was the thing with. They also did one with Final Fantasy IV where they were like, "Oh, here's this mock-up shot that showed up in Famitsu of a Final Fantasy game that never came out."
Yeah, because it was going to be on the Famicom because Dragon Quest IV was on Famicom, but then they're like, "Oh, we're gonna." Then it turned into, well, let's make Final Fantasy IV an action RPG, and then I think Sakaguchi was like, "Nah, that doesn't really fit in with the ethos of the series."
Boy, if
So
only they had
then they
somebody
took.
around to say, "Let's not do that now."
So what they ended up doing was they took that action RPG engine and they moved that to what now is Secret of Mana.
Yeah, that's must be what I'm thinking of.
And let's see. Yeah, so so Final Fantasy, the release dates were like 87, 88, 90, 91, 92, 94 because they were focused on making quality games, so they wanted to make 6 extra quality. So they had a 2-year gap. And then from 94 you don't have another Final Fantasy till 97, but if you look at just releases, just Squaresoft releases of games that everybody knows, you have Final Fantasy in 87, 88, 90, and then you have the Saga series starting in 89, 89, 90, and I think 91 or 92, and then you've got the Romancing Saga series start. Like, you've just had just a bunch of good games that were coming out just year after year. Just a wealth of good quality games, and it's interesting to see how they could have done that because like I read that the Romancing Saga 2 dev team was 20 people, and it took about a year for development.
And I kind of forgot about those just because they kind of skipped the US.
Yeah, and then they decided, well, we'll bring Saga Frontier over, but I think that had a lot to do with the fact that initially Sony was publishing a lot of those, and then Square and Electronics Art came to a deal where, because Electronics Art had better North American, they knew the North American market better. They said, okay, well, we'll publish your games. We'll do a joint partnership and publish your games here in the U.S., and then you publish our games. So they had Square EA, which anybody in the late 90s remembers, and then there was EA Square. So they handled all of the EA games because they didn't know the Japanese market. So they did that until I think 2000 or 2001. The partnership ended, especially once Square Enix came into the picture. It was gone for good. But I think a lot of that was also due to the fact that Sony, once that one guy, Bernie Stolar or whatever, once he left, they were more willing to publish a lot of those titles.
Bernie 2020 here.
No, he had that strict no 2D games policy.
I remember that. That was so strange.
And then he went over to Sega because they fired him at Sony, and then he proceeded to screw up Sega. He released the Dreamcast for $99, which got a lot of units moved, but at a loss. So, that obviously didn't pan out well for Sega, because after that they left the hardware market.
We're never making a system again. That was a weird time, though, because you would never expect... that was like at a time where you would never expect to see a Sonic game on a Nintendo or Sony system.
Yeah, especially because I think Sega performed... It was more popular. Certain Sega systems were more popular in the West. I think overall, the Genesis won the console wars, if I'm not mistaken, or at least they were winning for the most part. And people in the West still love the Dreamcast.
There should be an RPG about the console wars of the early 90s.
There should be, and it doesn't need to be. What's that one anime that they do based on? It's supposed to be like different game eras or something like that. I want to say Sword Art Online, but I don't think so.
That's like the online. Yeah, that's just like an MMORPG type thing. Oh man.
Because I know there were a bunch of games they would release on the Vita, and I was like,
Oh,
"What is
it's
this about?" And then
Neptunia
I
or
saw,
something?
yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I've never played one, but I mean, I don't know how they are. They've been going for a while, so maybe they're decent enough.
But another thing you had a lot of in-house developers back in those days too. Like it's uncommon nowadays to see a first-party developer on a game release. I mean, I guess you have a couple like Sony Bend or whatever it's called, Bend Studio or whatever, but you nowadays you see a lot more second or third party developers on games, even remakes, than you did back in those days. It was just like Squaresoft developments area 5 or something like that, or Nintendo EAD 3 or something that made I don't know, Mario or Zelda something. And the only time I really remember a third party is with Fire Emblem. They would use whoever that company is that developed Advance Wars. They would work with the first party Nintendo studio to create the Fire Emblem
Snake
games.
women are charming the male characters. I think we have a problem here.
The male gaze is at it again.
Alright, I have to throw some. Man, the inventory in this is so small.
Maybe they took some away when they added some of those changes to the.
It really seems like it. Oh, I needed that black male. Black male.
You needed a black male, huh? Are you trying to tell me that you are into the
Well, you know, I could have meant the criminal concept.
yeah, I know that too, but I was like, well, it could go either way, and if you got a cage or something,
that would be a problem. All right, let me see if I can equip these.
I don't know anybody personally that's done that, but I've had coworkers that have told me, yeah, there's this one coworker that I used to have, and he told me that these people would
that kind of thing.
Yeah, they would hit him up. They're like, "Oh yeah, can you come in and have sex with my wife tonight?"
Wow. All right. Wait, how much does he lose? Oh, he loses 1 and gains that much more. Rim Ring is definitely better.
I don't understand it, but then again, you know, I'm not I'm not in the ethnic group that is known for that type of activity. I'm in the ethnic group known for committing the act.
It's too much soy.
I still to this day try to understand the logic that they have to where, because remember when they had that article where it was like, oh, cucking is for intellectuals.
Yeah, that was really bad.
I'm just trying to understand the thought process to where we get to that point where it's like, oh yeah, you're better if you do this.
It is quite perplexing how one could ever come to that conclusion, or how anybody would read that and buy into it no matter what they say in there.
It just reminds me of that one stream we did where we read the article about the woman who was like, oh, my boyfriend went to move in with my husband and my kids and I into our house, and it has the most predictable ending, and she still wants to insist that it has nothing at all to do with the fact that this is not a normal relationship. You know, the fact that her kids are waking up in the middle of the night crying after her boyfriend moved in their house and started sleeping in her bed, and their dad had to sleep in another room, and the kids are waking up in the middle of the night crying, and then the dad eventually moves out of the house, and that
had nothing to do with the relationship
status.
Yeah,
he was just going in a different place in life.
Yeah,
you know,
a place away from his cheating wife. If you don't mind me asking, what do you think about what's going on with Ralph right now? If I remember correctly, he was hosted on your channel for a time. Yeah, he was here for a while. But I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. Like, if you mean the whole drama thing surrounding him right now, I really kind of feel like it's just kind of overblown. Like, I'm not seeing what's justifying the whole Killstream is dead and stuff like that. It feels like a very manufactured situation. Like, I don't know.
Like perhaps it's magnified.
I mean, I guess at whatever. I don't care. I think like the whole getting involved or allowing Zoom to even go anywhere near the show was probably a bad idea. And I don't really understand why people are invested in that guy or listening to him. But, yeah, that's not really my point of interest, I guess.
Yeah, I never really got that. Like,
I'm not saying you can't. I'm not
again,
saying you can't criticize people. I'm just saying that the things that he's going after are kind of just stupid to me. Like, it's not. I haven't seen proof of anything that has been claimed.
But at the same time, I do feel like everybody has their time in the limelight, and then
yeah, I mean it comes and goes. What can you do? Oh wait, I don't even need that bomb anymore. How can you can get more than one, but you can't do anything with it. I mean, supposedly he quit drinking, so if he did, I'm glad to hear that, and hopefully he sticks with it.
Yeah, I never really had an issue with guys.
See, here's the thing, though. It's like, all right, now you got all these people like saying, "Oh yeah, he's a drunk" and blah blah blah. But many of those same people were the ones kind of like memeing it on when they were a fan of the show. So it's like you can't use that. You can't use that as like a criticism or as a way to bash on the guy when you were like encouraging it before because you thought it was funny. I mean, granted, there were some funny moments, but I don't think that means that he should continue on that path,
Or they're also diehard fans of other people who drink in a similar way, and they egg them on too. Like, oh yeah, they meme it on them. And it's like, okay, you can't keep making jokes and having fun with it, and then now it's gotten too serious. It's like, well, yeah, but they tell you before that it's gotten too serious before, and you're just like, oh, that's funny, getting drunk.
So the Stream Me, yeah, I mean the Stream Me thing was obviously a big problem just because they got kicked from YouTube, and now that they're back on YouTube and on a different channel, they obviously have to be careful because they can't get the guy's channel banned. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're being a bitch and whatever, but you can't expect someone to risk their livelihood and then you go and just like show no care for that in return. So I mean, I kind of understand maybe having to, say cool it sometimes with certain things. It's not because you want to, it's because if you're going to be on YouTube, unfortunately that's the nature of the beast, and you kind of have to accept certain things along with that, and plus the fact that you're on someone else's channel. Like, all right, for example, if it's my channel and I'm doing whatever and I don't care, yeah, it's mine. I take responsibility for whatever happens as a result. But if I'm a guest on somebody else's, probably not going to do that if they're nice enough to lend it out.
Yeah, you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you.
All I know is what has been stated publicly, and what has been stated publicly is that both Zidane and Gator are doing, different things in real life. I think Gator's going back to school. Supposedly Zidane's working on a promotion. I know he's been overseas. So that's all I know personally. Like, I don't have much intel on that kind of stuff. And if I did and it was a super personal thing, I wouldn't share it anyway. I mean, it's not my place. But yeah, I think the time. I mean, obviously, I think the timing was bad because the thing is, he got booted from that, and then because this whole site shut down, and then to lose, well, not lose, but to have the co-hosts around that have been with you for a while less than usual, it's obviously going to be a change. Nobody likes change. It's going to be hard for people to accept. You know, they're always going to be comparing whoever's on to the people that were on before. So yeah, it's not as simple as just coming back the same way. I think after a while, you know, build up, maybe the people that missed the way it was either come around or new people come in and enjoy the show. If you keep going, it should be fine. I think focusing on all the infighting stuff is what causes these things to blow up. Like Kumite, for example, that got out of control, and then you had all the hosts fighting with each other. So
is it called that again now, or is it still like Wrestling Tonight or whatever?
I think he's back using that name. I hate even talking about them just because they're so desperate for relevancy and they're just so out of the picture now. Like, nobody pays attention to them. And it's just funny because they want to be acknowledged so bad. And I feel like the best thing is to not.
If you don't acknowledge them, they won't. They won't
Gator was already on at least once that I've seen. I haven't been able to tune in every night. Like, some nights I'll fall asleep early or something like that. But the nights I've seen, he's been on at least once. So I don't think it was a big implosion like that we just don't know about.
Yeah, I do think that there's a big tendency to just want to make something that's not there.
I feel like it's getting caught up in the nature of, just like in the nature of the game. You know, this is kind of like an area that thrives on those kind of things because a lot of the times those like stupid little arguments are funny, but when you turn it around on everybody, eventually you run out of people, and then it gets to the point where it's like the people you were watching and now the people you're going after. And I'm not saying your mind can never change about anybody, and you know, maybe you come to find out something that you don't like about a person or anything like that, but I feel like it's
like Maddox.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it should be at least reasonable, at least justified. It's like there's this weird thing on the internet where, you know, everybody has to be perfect at all times, and that's just not how reality works.
People make mistakes. Not everybody knows everything about it. Like, that's the perfect thing. That's where I see it the most, where you have to know everything about everything, and it's like you can't. There are some things I just honestly don't care about, and I'm not gonna spend all day researching because I have a job and I have bills to pay. I don't have time to sit there and understand everything about physics or whatever that some random commenter does, and I don't care to.
So cool Tactics said he was drunk, lush in Miami and ate a burger out of the trash. He has a part to play in his downfall. I mean, first of all, I thought the burger thing was a meme, and I think he owned up to the Miami thing, and he offered refunds to anybody that wanted them and whatnot. So I don't, and now it's led to like, oh, I quit drinking. So, I mean, yeah, okay, you could say those are mistakes, but then what does a person have to do to get back into good graces? Like, at what point do you say, okay, person made these mistakes and owned up to them, and that's it? You know?
Yeah, it goes back to the.
I thought it was a joke too, but people have this thing in their head, and that's what they're going with. Even if that was the case, is that what is that where we're going? Is that what we're getting people on now? I mean, if that happened, yeah, that's funny, that's strange, but is it? I don't know. Is it like that big? Oh, it's the end? I don't know, man. That's weird.
It's just weird who they kind of pick and choose who they want to forgive, because I remember when Jim shuttered when he shuttered the Internet Aristocrat, you know, everybody was just railing on him, but now it's like the man can do no wrong.
I think they were mad. I think they felt. I know this is stupid, but I think they felt betrayed. You know what I mean?
Okay, Spoon.
um, all that would be fine if the show wasn't boring. Well, I mean, as far as like thinking it's boring or whatever, that's not something that I can, um, really argue. Like if you think it's boring, that's how you feel about it. I still think that even though it's not the same, it still has its charms. But that's that's for each individual person to decide whether or not they like it.
Yeah, I think people kind of forget sometimes.
It's also difficult. Like, I get it. It's a stream, you sit there and talk, but it's also difficult to have, like, all consistently entertaining content each and every day. Like, that's rough. I find it sometimes difficult to collect shit for streams, and I do one once every blue moon. So, I can't imagine 5 times a week.
Remember, because everybody's trying to say, "Oh, this is what's replacing television," but remember, in television, especially for late night shows, you have teams of people that are creating bits. They're finding ways to do content. So you as the host you're not the ones that you're not doing all the writing, you're not doing all the content creation. But especially in the era of YouTube, you have people that are doing all of that. They're having to find their own content, they're having to find their own things to talk about. There aren't people really writing bits and doing all these things anymore. So it's like the drama is the only thing. The drama is the main thing that can be entertaining, because all the other pieces of content, sometimes they're interesting if you agree with the opinion.
And sometimes when that drama doesn't happen, that's when I feel like you end up with people that sometimes want to go out of their way to manufacture things, and then you just end up ruining what you had.
Yeah, because I think somebody called it like a soap opera for men, or they called that whole, kind of.
I can kind of see that.
And that
it's like WWE of the internet.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, somebody has to be the heel.
Yeah, you have all these characters and who likes who at what moment.
But the problem is that nobody can tell if these are characters, if this is all just scripted, or if it's real. Like, obviously it's not scripted, but it's hard sometimes to disassociate the fact that this is a person, because at least when they're doing these scripted bits on television,
it's like a big paid production, and it has writers and all that shit.
Right. So even if two people didn't get along, that's due to something else that has nothing at all to do with the bit itself. They don't hate each other because of the bit. They hate each other because something that happened off screen. Whereas these are like, it's a little bit of, oh, this is happening on screen, and maybe this is something, but maybe it's not. And I think that it gets hard to kind of disassociate. Is this personal? Is this just manufacturing something?
I mean, in a way it all is, because you could just say, oh, ultimately nothing that happens on YouTube or whatever really makes a difference in the real world or whatnot. But people are obviously looking to it as entertainment, so in a sense it matters. And I guess what kind of gives it more legitimacy is that people are now have this as a job. So when there's work and money involved, then it becomes more of a, I guess, important matter. Like, if everybody was just doing this shit for free, I don't know that it would be as big of an investment, because they'd have to be, they'd have to be encouraged to be doing other stuff, I guess, to make a living. But when you have more time to put into it, because that's what your job is or whatever, then yeah, it's going to matter. Like, that's why the thing with Mundane Matt blew up, because he's not just sitting there he is just sitting there reading articles, but he's making a living off of it. Now, you can argue whether or not that's a big wage, but that's what he has decided to do. So when it comes to find out, like, oh yeah, he's doing all this shady shit that goes against the points that he's making, and it's completely contrary to all the beliefs he stated, yeah, people are going to be annoyed at that, and they're going to go after him.
Yeah. I
mostly thought that was funny. Like, the stream was just entertaining. Whatever you think of Matt outside of his YouTube or whatever, that was just a funny stream. You don't come across those very often. And what happens is, like, people get interested in those shows because of those moments, and then you can't really recreate them. You know, it just has to come along organically.
Those are the events that pull people
Oh
in,
yeah,
because I think
Failure is losing a lot of weight, so that's really good.
Hmm.
I mean, he's got a ways to go, but
I,
he's already done like 100 pounds or something, so that's pretty impressive.
oh, that's really good.
Where am I going? I think. Oh no, the sealed cave.
The
Well,
best.
before we do that,
dungeon.
let's take a look. Yeah, I mean, all like everybody fucks up at some point, and I mean, first of all, you got to look at each situation individually and what it is that they did and what they're doing to make up for it. And if somebody's trying to actually make a step to get healthier, then you know, all laughs aside, that should be encouraged instead of, because it comes to a point where it's like, okay, you hated the person when they were doing stupid shit and when they were doing wrong, but now you also hate them when they're trying to do right and they're trying to make an improvement in their life. So at that point, it's just like, all right, you got to admit that there's just nothing you can do to make you happy, and you just don't like that person, and you're not gonna, no matter what, and that's fine. But then you kind of can't act like you're just this concerned citizen.
And there's way too much of that. People being confrontational.
I guess that's where the
then,
concern trolling term comes from.
well, I thought every time I look it up, they always say it means something else, but yeah, that's where I feel like it comes from. Where
The Tonka thing is hilarious because he could have just showed up. Like, obviously he can walk. I don't know what his lies or his backstory is or whatever, but he can obviously walk. So he should have just showed up and either, you know, won the match or took the ass kicking, and he would have had a lot more credit either way. But to go and be a dumbass and then go and be like, oh yeah, well guys, I'm gonna prove I can fight because I'm gonna go do this wrestling promotion thing where I can script my victory. Like, how do you think that makes you look badass? Your win was predetermined.
to 280 million and 0 or something like that.
Yeah, it was not, like you said, it wasn't an own. It was proving that he was really a coward because he actually didn't even have the disability excuse.
All he had to do was keep his mouth shut. He didn't have to keep trying to challenge people, because that's what's going to happen. Eventually, you're gonna challenge somebody, and they're going to take you up on it.
Yeah, that is for sure.
And then you got to make a decision.
Especially if you've banked your whole personality on being the tough guy, you probably want to make sure that you can follow through with that. Never understood why Tonka let the whole wheelchair meme get to him. Obviously he can walk. Why did he care so much about the wheelchair joke? Yeah, I don't really understand that either. Him reacting that way made it look like there was something to it.
Just ego, pure and simple.
Wait, this is actually better, but what am I losing? Oh, it's better in a completely different way. I see. Percentage. Oh, this is going to be interesting. Gold pin. Zeus Rage.
Remember in the Super Nintendo when they removed those items, but they still showed one of them in the beginning?
Light Bolt and Firebomb.
Yeah.
You could get them, but you had to steal... Okay, so the Light Bombs were from a Thunder Dragon in the... the sealed cave, those dragons are hard to come by, and the fire bombs you stole from red dragons, at which point they were completely useless because they were Fire 1.
Yeah, who needs that at that point in the game?
So I have no idea why they left them in there. I don't quite understand the logic behind that. Maybe there wasn't really supposed to be any. I have a hard time understanding what they were thinking when it comes to some of the weird edits that get made in video games. Like, when you have a game that's completely violent and you're killing everybody, but they decide to put a streak of light in front of a woman's butt. I can't wrap my head around that. And it's not like it's real. It's animated. It's not even a person. Why do we do these things?
Hey, they care more about the plight of fictional anything than they do real.
It does seem that way. But you know what? I think it's because that's the easy victory. Like, it's easier to get a game censored than it is to change a real-world social issue.
Well, that requires you to make an effort to do something.
You get quick results and all the same feelings. So it doesn't matter. In their heads, they have to, like, equate it to the same thing.
I'm making a difference.
I guess I'll sell that extra bomb. I feel weird doing that because they're so hard to come by usually.
Well, as long as you're selling bombs and not smuggling in people illegally and then sending them to sanctuary cities.
All JRPGs must have trash items, it's the rule. Censorship is anti-art and self-expression. I think it's just really obnoxious, and there's just too many double standards for it to make any sense. It's like, okay, like I said, you have all this murder in games and stuff, and that's perfectly fine, but the second there's, like, breasts or a body part or a character with armor that you claim doesn't make sense, which, if you think about any of it, none of it makes sense. And that's the problem. But the other stuff is just fine.
Well, didn't they complain about that for Velvet Crow?
They did. Which reminds me, I actually want to replay that game too.
One of those people said that one of the localizers is that the localizer, I guess, was one of those guys that's like, oh, I'm gonna make this character extra gay because this website, like Christian something gamer or something, was complaining about certain social justice tropes or something.
I don't remember that. But it sounds awful.
Yeah, I felt that way that was the reason I learned Japanese, because I didn't like localization back then. So, when people are like, "Oh, localization is a cancer," like, yeah, I agree. It is why I've done things the way I've done them for a long time, because the last thing I want to do is buy and play some game where somebody's inserting. I mean, working designs used to do that a lot, and back then everybody thought it was funny because, oh, pop culture references. But it's like, yeah, if you go play Lunar now, either Eternal Blue or Silver Star Story Complete, those jokes don't age very well. So, yeah, that might have been funny to hear a Monica Lewinsky joke back then, but it's not really all that funny now. If anybody plays it now, if they grew up in that time, they'll get the joke. But if they're a kid playing it, they're not going to get
Like,
at all
what
what
is
you're.
going on here?
Yeah, like it's funny because I looked on a GameFAQs board at Arc the Lad Collection, and they're like, "Oh, this is the best localization ever," and I actually want to agree with them because like it's one of the few working designs localizations where they don't interject their stuff in because I thought that was a double standard when people are like, "Oh yeah, working designs did great," but it's like they did the same thing. They went and inserted stories. I even read an interview about Arcalad because they were talking about there was a moment in the game where an NPC's mom, one of the villains, is basically hinting at the fact that he raped her,
Jeez.
and he was saying that in their localization, the director Victor Island, he said in their localization that he had the character that villain be just more proud and like very coy with what he did, like talking about how much he enjoyed it, whereas in the Japanese version he was just much more explicit about, oh yeah, I did this. And I saw a YouTube video a couple of days ago of the Japanese version, and it's actually none of that. The Japanese version is basically just like one comment and that's it.
I guess I just don't really understand the desire they have to mess with things like that. It's like they overestimate the value of what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's like
and
an insecurity of the job mixed with some weird political motivation.
well, I'm in the case of working designs, they're not around
Yeah,
anymore.
and that wasn't
They're
political. It
they're,
was just silly. I mean, I guess
well,
the Monica
that
Lewinsky
was
joke could technically be taken as political, but
yeah, there were industry politics at play there. That's why they shut down. More industry politics than actual, governmental politics. Because a lot of the games you probably think of, especially in the latter years, a lot of them were collections, but they actually didn't want that. They wanted to release them as separate games as they originally were, like the Growlancer games. But Sony told them you can't do that. It says if you're going to release these old games, then you have to release them as compilations.
I'm tempted to
And so
try out like the Land of Summoned Monsters instead of the Sealed Cave.
I did that.
I usually do them
I used to
before
do them.
that. Of course, when I do the Sylph Cave, I'm always like, oh yeah, it's a waste of time because I can't wake up Yang. Or are you supposed to visit him at least once before you can wake him?
I don't think I ever visited him before you could wake him. I think I just visited him when you could wake, or when I tried to wake him.
This is float on every floor.
Yeah, that's one of the huge peeves of mine of that dungeon.
And the fiends, the red imp guys that will do the stupid charm because you can't kill them in one hit.
Yeah, those are also cancers.
Oh, wow, these guys are tough. I do feel like there might be a little bit of difficulty added, but I'm not sure. Because I'm not really that high level. Cecil's the highest.
Not Cecil.
Definitely not. Oh, come on, where's that assassin dagger? Uh-oh. Well, good thing he's dead, because Berserk would not have been fun.
You mean he's fallen or swooned? You have to say swoon.
Oh, right. Metroid Prime.
Remember
I have not played the Metroid Prime games. I'm a Super Metroid guy.
I have not played 3 yet. I have played 1 and 2. I thought 2 was acceptable, and I like 1. I never had a Wii, so that's why I haven't played the third one.
I have a Wii that is currently underused.
Just like all Wii's after 2010.
That might be true. Well, it's like I turned it into an emulator as well, but it's just I have so many other options to do that.
That's basically me with the classic Xbox.
I have that as well. And it has like more games on it than you can ever play. It has like 12,000 games or something like that. It'd be interesting to be able to hook that up and stream it because there's just so many.
That's an eBay lot worth of games.
Well, it has arcade and it even has a few PS1 and N64 games on it, but then those get towards like the higher end of, you know, memory usage, so there's not that many.
Yeah, I do remember actually putting Arcalad, speaking of work designs, Arcalad and Alundra on the Xbox. But you're right, not many because of that very issue.
I think mine has like Symphony of the Night on it. I don't remember what else. Wait, is this the right way? No, there's a treasure chest up there, isn't there? Oh, Conjurers. It's great when you get the one that just summons the imp.
Not the imp capped.
No, I miss when they were called imps.
Yeah, instead of goblins.
Insert, did someone say goblins joke?
Uh-oh. Are we going to have Goblin Slayer critics?
Maybe. You can't like that. It's too problematic. You have to feature certain elements responsibly.
Whatever that means.
It means the way I want it to be. Pretty much. Is this one? I think this one's going to be monsters. Monsters in a box.
More like cancers in a box.
The one thing that I might not be able to do, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to beat Leviathan and Ashura.
Especially if the well, because even back then I felt like lightning and all that never worked.
Yeah, it's not easy. I usually do it at this point, and I am able to win, but given that this is not the original version, I don't know if there's any changes there.
I'm tempted to believe there is, just because it was kind of hard originally, so why not make it harder?
Just to torture me. I forgot to even... Oh, I guess it hasn't been cast yet. I thought Titan was already summoned, and I missed how much damage it did. Wanted to see if I was wasting my time by using it.
Never with Titan.
No, it was actually pretty good. sure hope those assassin daggers don't have the same effect on party members as they do on monsters.
Guess we'll find out.
Well, it didn't that time, at least.
Yeah, but that's the thing about probabilities.
Oh, I just learned something. Completely by accident. Apparently the warp spell kills you now. If used in battle.
I think it's trying to be more like the older Final Fantasies where you did get penalized for using it.
Yeah, I mean, I know you could just exit battles with the exit spell, but this is just... Oh, you're dead. Alright, where should we go? I don't know, it sure feels like there's a lot of encounters in here.
There always is in that cave.
I don't know what it is, but I've never liked this enemy. The Nagaraja. Like, they're not hard or anything like that. It's just... They're just so useless.
As a kid, I always misread that, so I thought there was a certain racial slur. in
Well, that's not very sensitive. I think they're weak against ice. Yep, she's out of here. It's great when you can get the conjurer that summons the spider lady and you're floating and you just kill her over and over again and he keeps summoning new ones. You could build up experience very easily that way. So I haven't played as many Castlevania games as I should have. So for the time being, I'd probably just say like the Nintendo one. But there are some that I want to play on Game Boy Advance and DS that I haven't gotten the chance to.
the Game Boy Advance ones I definitely recommend.
Just the original. I guess I should have said Castlevania 1. Or... I liked the idea behind 3 where you could change characters, but man, that game is rough. Dawn of Sorrow is your favorite? There's a Gorgon sword in there. But the ice one might be the superior choice. Just in case I encounter a spider woman.
Just make sure she's not doing any bad poses.
I can just switch in battle, so it doesn't really make a difference, I guess. Plus, I like to try out this sword. You don't get many opportunities to use it. Poison dart. I wonder if that's a ninja weapon. Oh, maybe it's just a throwing weapon. Too bad the item description doesn't tell you. Huh. Alright, we need to put some of this crap away. Taking up my inventory. I think the Grimoire is just a summon spell. Like you get one free summon randomly. Alright, have a good one. Thank you for coming. I think I'll probably be wrapping up before too long anyway. Probably when I get to the save point. Accomplishments were made, so...
And a few mistakes were made.
Yeah, there was that one death. But we learned. We learned to use status effects. And therefore we grew and improved.
We acknowledged our problematic behaviors and we changed it.
Ooh, learned Cure 4. That's actually really helpful if I'm going to be attempting to get the summons. Oh no. Oh, whoops. Losing control of this stream here. Let's see. Treasure chest. Oh, this is the treasure chest with the 6. Is it like 6 warriors? I always give all of the HP improving items to Rydia because she has such garbage HP usually. So it's kind of sad when she has more hit points than Edge.
Yeah, but she needs it. She's got the lowest of all of them.
I want to say that in the original version, when I like maxed out or whatever, she had probably like 4,000 HP or something like that. I think I kind of preferred it back when each party member had different growth and like ended up with different final hit point amounts if you just let them go naturally without any interference with items. Alright, let's save. Oh, 5 warriors. I thought it was 6. We need to cast Titan. It's a ninja sword.
Where my ninjas at?
So I guess it... What is that? I don't even know what those attributes are. I guess the feather is speed? I don't know what the heart one is, though. Does it tell you anywhere? Well, it's better attack, so I guess I'll give it a shot. Made it to the monster village, though. A lot of items. I think the tail is in that one. Yep. Alright, decent amount of inventory space. I think I will go shopping first. Aegis shields are pretty good. Let's see. It's better than the black belt, probably. Can she use that? Or probably not, right? Guess we're left with the buckler the whole entire game. Unless they made some sort of shield specifically for her. But I guess it's an improvement in the sense that she could never use one before. So there is that.
You know, I don't remember the Six Warriors thing.
In the treasure box?
Yeah, for some reason I'm drawing a blank on it. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's like they're the night guys, but I don't remember what was in that box originally.
I don't either. Maybe a weapon?
Yeah, I think it was. But it definitely wasn't the Kikuchi or whatever it was.
Oh, I think in the I think in the later versions, because I remember seeing that, because I remember because that sword's in Final Fantasy Tactics,
Yep.
so I feel like in the later translations that's what they called it, but it was probably just given some generic katana name back in the Super NES days.
Well, you know, can't have something too complicated. People might have to work to pronounce it.
Can't have ethnic names, you know, in a Japanese video game.
What are you thinking?
That was another localization decision where it's like, okay, that's kind of silly. Where they're like, oh, we don't want to give characters, we have to change. Like, I don't mind the name Terra, but I did think the reasoning for changing it from Tina to Terra was silly.
Yeah. Although I guess I do, if I had to choose, I do prefer Terra, just not even for nostalgia reasons, just on a name basis.
I do prefer Sabin to Mash.
Yeah, that was a good choice too. So I guess there can be good points, but in general, I wouldn't recommend leaving it to them.
Yeah, sometimes they can get it right, and then other times they get it horribly wrong.
Alright, let's equip some of these holy arrows. Very nice. Why is it...
Can't say stuff like holy.
Okay, my Sunday arrows.
There you go.
Found a way around it.
My secular but still moral arrows.
Man, the Assassin Dagger improves all of that stuff. But this gives you 10 more attack power. Whatever.
But it is just like a bunch of white men to assassinate monsters of color.
Sabin's wrestle moves never work on emulator. I had a problem getting them to work, I think, in the Steam version for some reason. I don't know if it was the controller I was forced to use. I think it was. Because it wasn't anything resembling the Super Nintendo controller. It was that stupid Logitech, which I usually don't have a problem with for, you know, more modern games, but it didn't work well in that because the D-pad, it kind of rolls around.
Yeah, it's like nobody wants to do the just the Nintendo Cross D-pad.
I don't know why either. I feel like it's such a good setup.
I was tempted to believe that it's because they couldn't, because maybe some
kind of copyright
patent
thing.
Yeah, but Sony does something
they
similar.
basically do the same thing. It's just that they have a little bit of separation in between.
Yeah, so then at that point, like, yeah, then I'm not on board with this.
Wasn't there?
I mean, I guess the silly Xbox D-pad makes, which is not much of a consolation, but it makes tank controls easier to use.
Now wait a second. Wasn't there a hidden passage?
Yeah, there were quite a few hidden
there was
passages in that.
There was a hidden passage down here that lets you get to those treasure boxes down below, and I always thought it was by the armor shop in this corner. Don't tell me they moved it just for fun. This is Ashura and Leviathan, yep. So I'm not wrong there. Is there another staircase? This is the save point. But I don't see any... Let me go check over here. Yeah, Edgar has some really cool skills. Ah, there it is.
I always like the drill and the chainsaw.
Oh, there's the Yoichi bow. Oh, don't tell me they're gonna teleport me out now. Okay, no, I can come back. If you go down to that other square, though, it takes you out of the dungeon, which would have been rather annoying. I would not have been a fan of that. Alright, so there's a 2-item shop. Don't they sell remedies anywhere? Can't make my life easy. Alright, well I guess since I'm here, I will at least try one fight with Ashura and see how it works. Win or lose, that will be... I guess that will be the end of this stream for the evening. But we'll see what happens.
Winner's drink. Remember that.
Alright, well... we'll find out, I guess.
And next time on Dragon Ball Z.
Featuring Funimation. So I don't know if this is just a rumor people are spreading, because I haven't seen anything that confirmed it. But supposedly there was word that Toei might take their properties away from Funimation due to all the drama that's going on.
I don't know, but they did take that voice of Vegeta away from Kamea-Con, so... I mean, I will probably never go to one, but if I were, I would go to that one.
I would rather see one of the original... Shit, she's gonna cast Wall, isn't she?
Although he was the voice of Edward, which was not the best choice. I mean, it was good for him, but it was like, it's more like the whiny Vegeta voice that he did, and not the I'm the Prince of All Saiyans Vegeta.
Crap. Yeah, Wall still works. I'm going to, I just wanted to cast Slow at least once. And then I'll cast Wall. Virus was pretty, I guess, a decent idea too, because it'll drain her life slowly. I don't know how helpful it'll be, but more damage is always a good thing. I think I might throw that poison dart. Why save it, right? Wasn't that good anyway. Now, how do I tell if wall is still active? That will be a problem. Oh crap. Her attacks are still something else. I bet you could kill her with Virus if you get her HP low enough and it just runs out. Unless the status effect itself doesn't work on her, but unfortunately there's no way to tell. Alright, we need to cast some Cure 4. Well, if I'm in the menu, I can see if wall is still active on me, but I can't still see if it's active on her. And in this battle, it's better to have wall on her because then she reflects all her healing spells back at you. I don't remember how much HP she has though. I think it's up there. Man. That was useless. Yeah, I'm basically stuck with physical attacks because otherwise she'll keep healing herself and you never really get anywhere, especially with Cure 3 and Cure 4. I feel like wall should be running out soon, though, but there's just no way for me to tell. Cade will betray you for the 7th time. Yeah, that was a common theme. Oh shit. See, that's what I wanted to avoid. Now I just took... You can't be serious. I wonder if the fact that healed for 0 meant that she cured herself completely. Because I'm fairly certain I've done more than 5,000 damage. Come on. It's a hack. There's differences in the game. If you go to romhacking.net and Final Fantasy IV Ultima, you'll find a list of what the differences are.
ROM hacking? You mean cartridge modification.net?
There we go.
Although, according to Nintendo, those are illegal too. Or cartridge rippers. So you are allowed to have an archival copy of any software you have a license to, but they made the devices that you would use to archive it illegal. And I think it was the Ninth Circuit of Appeals. The same court circuit that is in California that's responsible for so many social justice rulings on various lawsuits that usually get overturned, but that's besides the point. But it's frustrating because nobody's challenged that. Nobody's said, hey, that's to say that a cartridge is proprietary and therefore you can't and therefore to have a device that archives it, which you have a legal right to do, making that illegal is effectively making it to where you are not able to uphold that end of the law, because you can't make an archive, and they haven't provided any suitable remedies for it. Of course, all Nintendo does and all they'll ever do is what they always do: charge you. Like, oh, you want to use this thing? Well, hell, let's put it on the new console we're going to put out, and let's charge you $5 for the same copy of Mario 3 that you could just play on
for the last 30 years.
Yeah. Like, how many times am I going to buy Mario 3?
Alright, we really need some healing here. I could reflect magic back at her, but then I'd have to cast reflect on myself, and I'm not willing to do that just because then it makes healing hard. Plus, I don't think there's any magic that she's really particularly weak against that makes it worth it, you know? I don't know, for some reason this has always been my strategy. I don't know where I picked it up. I just did it. Oof. Took him out.
So are you showing that are you showing that Italian heritage when you said took him out?
I guess so. Without even realizing it, see? Just came second nature.
He's sleeping with the fishes.
I put some cinder blocks on her feet. Well, I won. Oh, it wasn't the kid's strategy to cast heal on her? But doesn't that only bounce heal back on one of your party members? And then it's at random, so you can't really control who you're healing. You know what? Since we won, I'm tempted to end this out with Leviathan. That went a little bit better than I thought. I mean, it works. You're not wrong that it works. It's just that I'd rather just beat her down and with physical attacks and then heal as needed.
It works like Max just work.
All right, Leviathan, here we come. This one is probably going to be worse, even though you have more control over the battle. It's too bad you don't get a lightning-themed weapon with Cecil. That would have been nice.
Yeah, because you get the fire sword, ice brand.
I mean, Cain has a wind spear, so there is wind, but there's no... Holy shit, that was... I don't think I can win. His ice spells are insane.
It's just like the old days of trying to beat him.
Wow. For some reason, Ice 2 does thousands of damage, like 2,500.
That's quite the Ice 2.
I mean, there might be an entirely new strategy to this guy that I'm just going to have to figure out, because unless it's gain excessive amount of levels, I don't think I'm going to win. There's stops, there's Zeus Rage. That's... I mean, the Zeus Rage thing is lightning, but I don't think it's what I'm looking for. Don't hit him while he faces one way. Yeah, that might be. He does still cast Ice 2, though, which is apparently murderous. What in the world? Well, that didn't go well.
That was not how it was intended.
No. Okay, well. I do think I'm going to stop here, though. So next time we'll try to beat Leviathan. Maybe I don't know, maybe I'll try to level up a little bit off screen or something. That way maybe I can withstand those Ice 2s. You know what? You might be onto something with Reflect. I wonder if Ice heals him, though. Yeah, that is a good question.
I don't remember, but I did do that reflect trick way back when I first did that battle.
You know what? Let's try that real quick. I have a feeling I'm gonna die again, but we'll try Reflect and see if that helps. I believe I saved after her. I sure hope so. I'd be sad. Yep, I did.
You just gotta believe.
All right.
You gotta listen and believe.
Well, now we need Rosa to be fast enough to actually cast Reflect, because you can only... I'm fairly certain it's one at a time, and she doesn't go first. And
yeah,
she's
I believe
dead
it is
first.
one.
That's gonna make it a little difficult. Got genius Leviathan here. He sees my strategy. It's like, well, I'll just take out your spellcaster.
I'm on to you guys.
Don't make me kill you. And she's gone.
Now he can claim that he's received death threats from white men.
What about float? I don't think that has any effect on Tsunami, unfortunately.
No, it does not.
I could be underleveled. I mean, I guess that is entirely possible. I thought I was pretty decent, but never can tell. Alright, here we go. Let's test out this Reflect. It works in a sense, but boy, that's going to make for a really long battle. And I think we all just got wiped. Except for Edge, who has 3 HP. I don't know, I actually think Bahamut was easier than this because you knew what to... You basically just had to at least have one party member with Reflect. Yeah, I hate to say it, but I think that's going to be it for this evening.
Which Bahamut did the timed attacks, like countdown until Mega Flare?
Oh, if Drum Boy, if you're still there on the D-Live chat, thank you for the little donation there. I am paying attention to both chats, but that one didn't pop up. All right, so I guess we will return next time. I think I'm going to stream on Sunday in the afternoon at around 1 p.m. Eastern. So I will post about it on Twitter, of course, as usual, and I'm sure you'll get a YouTube notification as well. But I think I'm going to do... I think I'm mostly doing it for D-Live because there are some things happening that day, I guess. Shell, yeah, I mean, it'll do something if I cast it. I think I can compile it up to 4 times. So maybe that would help a little bit, but I feel like it wouldn't have such an impact that I'd win the battle. But that will be one of the things that I try next time for sure. Alright guys, thank you for joining the stream, and we'll see you next time.